Chapter 1168. Take down Mo Bay City? Then what if we don't take it down? Ning Wenfeng decisively grasped the topic and asked. Shi Wanshan didn't answer. However, whether it was Ning Wenfeng or Gu He, they both knew that if they couldn't take down the fort and the 50,000 soldiers lost their lives, then they would have to bear all the responsibility. At that time, not only would they not receive any rewards, they would also be punished or even beheaded. For a moment there was no movement in the tent. Obviously, the three of them knew what was going to happen next. Because of this, they didn't know what to say. Seeing the result of years of hard work being ruined overnight, no one would be in a good mood. Silence couldn't solve the problem, especially at this moment. If they couldn't think of a solution, they would be waiting for someone else to decide their fate. Just as the three of them were racking their brains trying to come up with a better idea, footsteps were heard from outside the tent. Then a voice that was neither hurried nor slow was heard. Generals, I am Captain Su Dei. I have something to discuss with the three of you. I wonder if it would be convenient for you. Su Dei? After hearing this, the three of them exchanged glances and shook their heads. Obviously, this name was still somewhat unfamiliar to them. But since there was a visitor and a major at that, of course, it wouldn't be good to casually reject him. Shi Wanshan's voice came from outside the door. Since you're here, come in. Su Dei lifted the curtain and entered the tent. After he entered, everything in the tent seemed to return to normal. Shi Wanshan and the other two sat high up. Even the broken wooden table was thrown to the side and piled up like garbage. This scene was seen clearly by Su Dei. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly, revealing a smile. When Su Dei entered the tent, Shi Wanshan and the other two also saw him clearly. This was especially true for Ancient River. When he saw Su Dei's appearance, he was certain that it was this person who had protected Sun Guang and prevented him from succeeding. He immediately stood up in anger and said, You're one of Sun Guang's men? What? Are you here to throw your weight around? Let me tell you, if that's what you think, then get lost immediately. Otherwise I'll kill you. As he spoke, Ancient River placed his right hand on his waist. This wasn't the main tent. Weapons were allowed here. With this, he really had the ability to kill. Ancient River said angrily, but Su Dei did not even look at him. Instead he said coldly, What? 300,000 taels isn't enough to make you bleed? If you really want to kill people here, what awaits you will be an irreversible situation. At that time, even your family will suffer and suffer together with you. You. Choked by Su Dei's words, Ancient River's face flushed red. Speaking of which, the current predicament of the all-encompassing department had a lot to do with his rashness back then. He would not make the same mistake a second time. Ancient River did not speak. Instead, it was Ning Wenfeng's turn to laugh coldly. What? Was General Su really here to flaunt his prowess? Let me tell you, if that's the case, then get lost as soon as possible. We don't have long to live anyway. If you provoke us, we'll start with you first. What Ning Wenfeng said was correct. If there was no better way, then the all-encompassing capital was about to face a very difficult battle. There was an 80% chance that they would be defeated. When that time came, their fate would be sealed. In the face of Ning Wenfeng's threat, Su Dei took it seriously. He turned to look at the other party and said seriously, Who said you don't have long to live? There's still a great future waiting for you. It's just that you won't be able to see it. As soon as these words fell, Shi Wanshan and the other two were stunned. It was obvious that they could not understand the meaning of these words. After a few breaths of time, Shi Wanshan was the first to react. He asked tentatively, What does General Su mean by this? What do you mean by a great future? Do you mean that we'll bow down to Sun Guang like you? If that's the case. Of course not. There are some things that I don't need to say. Do you really think that Sun Guang can be happy for long? Or are you unable to see the strength of the 5-star army? Su Dei did not wait for Shi Wanshan to speak and interrupted him. Then he said something that shocked Shi Wanshan and the other two. After several breaths of silence, Ning Wenfeng broke the silence. General Su should be one of Sun Guang's people, right? Have you thought about the consequences if these words of yours were to spread? Consequences? Let's not talk about whether that good-for-nothing Sun Guang will believe it or not. Based on the three of you, you wouldn't do something that harms others without benefiting yourself. Am I right? Su Dei, on the other hand, was brimming with confidence. Without waiting for permission, he took a seat and poured himself a cup of tea. It was as if the owner had returned to his own home. Su Dei's words were reasonable. He only had hatred for Guang and the other two. He did not have the slightest bit of affection for them. Of course he would not spread these words. However, even though they knew this, the three of them still could not make sense of the calm Su Dei. From their point of view, this person appearing here and saying such words was too difficult to understand. However, to be able to become a commander in the army, he was not a nameless person. The three of them were only temporarily stunned by Su Dei's sudden appearance. After a while they calmed down and thought about it. Ning Wenfeng came to a conclusion. After his expression changed, he asked tentatively, You are not one of Guang's people. You stayed by his side just to find the right opportunity. If that's the case, you should be from another faction. You're the five. That's right. Su Dei also interrupted Ning Wenfeng's words as he directly admitted it. For words like the five-star army, it was best not to say it in the military tent. Some things were better left unsaid. The fact that Su Dei admitted it so readily made Zhou Xian and the other two turn pale with fright. They did not expect the five-star army to be so powerful, and their infiltration of the military was so powerful. Especially when they thought about how long it had been since the incident happened. Su Dei appeared here in such a timely manner. Did this not mean that there were also spies from the five-star army around them? When they thought of this, Zhou Xian and the other two could not help but feel cold sweat running down their backs. The enemy was so pervasive. How could such an army be so easy to defeat? Could it be that the siege of the beginning city was also a show that they had directed and acted out? Was it to lure the Baiming army and then wipe them out? General Su, what about the beginning city? Ning Wenfeng had gradually adjusted his attitude and looked like he wanted to agree with Su Dei. The incident in the beginning city is true. Su Dei understood what Ning Wenfeng wanted to ask, so he answered decisively, but the important thing was that he added, It's just that the incident in the beginning city is just a temporary emergency. It won't be long before the situation here changes dramatically. If the three generals still stay here, then you have to make a choice. Of course you cannot believe my words. No, I believe. At this moment, how could Ning Wenfeng not believe it? Right now he was more concerned about where the bright future that Su Dei had mentioned was located. So he was a little hesitant and asked hesitantly, that? General Su, you just said something about a great future. It's about joining the five-star army. Su Dei's tone was as calm as water, as if he was talking about a very ordinary thing. To be honest, this time, Bugnam of Gojoseon is very angry about Baiming's actions. If the emperor is only worried that Bugnam of Gojoseon will send the army to attack because of his achievements, it's normal. However, Bugnam of Gojoseon can't accept the fact that he actually joined forces with the foreign tribes to attack the Han people. Over the years, I'm sure the three generals are very clear about Bugnam of Gojoseon's policies toward the Han people. Understood. This time it was not only Ning Wenfeng but even Gu He, who was beside him, also spoke out in agreement. What a joke. As the army closest to the beginning city, they naturally knew their every move and policy like the back of their hand. They also knew that even under their rule, many Han people wanted to live in the beginning city because it was equivalent to heaven for the Han people. Since you're clear about it, I don't need to explain anything else. It's because you're Han people and Han generals. If you're willing to join Bugnam of Gojoseon, isn't it the great future that I mentioned? Of course you don't have a choice now. You can either listen to Shiheng and be cannon fodder and die, or you can join Bugnam of Gojoseon. At that time, I guarantee that you'll be treated better and have more opportunities to display your strength in the future. Of course you can also choose to hand me over now. However, in this way not only you, but even your families will live in Bugnam of Gojoseon's hatred and vengeance. At that time I'm afraid that you'll be better off dead. Su Dei had thought about what he would face before he came, but he was not afraid. All of this was because he had Bugnam of Gojoseon and Yang Chendong behind him. The strength of the backer was also a kind of confidence. With this, Su Dei insisted that as long as one was smart, one should know how to make a choice. Therefore this trip seemed dangerous, but there was still a high chance of success. After Su Dei finished speaking, he sat there and did not make any move to force them. He wanted to give them enough time to consider, because only in this way, they would make the most correct choice, and it would also be the most beneficial choice for the five-star army. The room became silent again. Zhou Xian and the other two first looked at each other. Then Ning Wenfeng gave Su Dei an apologetic look. Then the three of them walked to the side and began to whisper. Chapter 1169. Going to North Mo City is sending ourselves to our deaths. If we don't go, we will be disobeying military orders. Right now we can only seek refuge with the 5-star army. Unexpectedly, the first to speak was the commander Ancient River, who had always been unconvinced by the 5-star army. The reason why Ancient River's attitude had changed so much was because everything that had happened so far had left him bitterly disappointed. This time it was precisely because his own army had been treated unfairly that what he wanted to do the most right now was to make up for everything. Right now it seemed that joining the 5-star army was the only way to solve all the problems. Thus, it was reasonable for him to agree. With Ancient River's attitude, Ning Wenfeng, who had originally been a bit hesitant, also said, "That's right. The 5-star army has always treated the Han army very well. For a capable Han general like us, we will definitely be able to play a big role in it. Moreover, everything that Bugnam of Gojoseon has done is very much to my liking. Regardless of whether it is his attitude towards the common people or his policies towards the foreign races, those are things that a true man should do. Joining them, I will not oppose it." Out of the 3 people, 2 of them expressed their attitudes. This naturally had to do with the current situation, but it was also greatly related to Yang Qindong's actions that gave them hope. Right now there was only Commander Shi Wanshan left. It had to be said that Shi Wanshan was originally a bandit. Later on he gave up the darkness and joined the light. Step by step he managed to achieve everything he had today. Normally this kind of experience should make it easier for him to accept the 5-star army, but he was the one who considered it the most. It wasn't because of anything else, but because in his eyes the great Ming dynasty was the most orthodox. All other powers were nothing more than small powers that depended on them. Before long they would all become like smoke in the wind. Right now, no matter what, he was still a Biming Major Rank 2 general. If he gave up everything and joined the 5-star army, and if the 5-star army was defeated by Biming one day, where would he go? Could it be that he was going to surrender again? Back then he had surrendered to Biming because it was his goal. Now that he had seen the darkness and ugliness, he would never go back. He also didn't want to become a slave of 3 surnames like Lu Zhuo in history. He didn't want to betray them, but he didn't know how to deal with the situation before him. However, if he were to ask him to surrender just like that, it wouldn't be to his liking either. As a result, he didn't make a decision on the spot. Instead, he turned around and said to Su Dei, "General Su, this matter is very serious. Can you allow me to think about it before giving you an answer?" Su Dei didn't think that he would be able to convince the other party in a single meeting. As a result, he expressed his understanding and nodded. He took out 300,000 taels of silver and handed it over to Shi Wanshan. "Bugnam of Gojoseon heard about your situation. This is the 300,000 taels of silver that he wanted me to give you. At the very least, it can solve the urgent needs of the army. After all, the soldiers in the army are Han people. Their relatives are also Han people. We can't disappoint the Han people." After saying this, Su Dei swaggered off. He believed that if the other party thought it through, they would definitely take the initiative to look for him. As for what happened today, as long as they weren't stupid, they would definitely tell others about it. After Su Dei left, Shi Wanshan and the other 2 looked at each other in dismay. Especially when they looked at the 300,000 taels of silver in front of them, they didn't know what to say. The 30,000 Han soldiers who died in the Wanquan division were all killed in the battle with the 5-star army when they attacked the beginning city. For this reason, the 5-star army also paid a certain price. Now, the relatives of these enemies actually needed to be comforted by Bugnam of Gojoseon. Just based on this, the 3 of them felt a burning sensation on their faces. I really don't know what to say." Shi Wanshan's face was red as he held it in for a long time before he finally said this sentence. "Yes, Bugnam of Gojoseon is very broad-minded, especially his deep feelings for the Han people. It's not something we can imagine. With this kind of behavior, I'm willing to follow him," Ning Wenfeng said with a serious expression. This was equivalent to expressing his stance. Ancient River already had this idea before. After seeing Su Dei's behavior, how could he hesitate? He immediately said, "I also agree." Only Shi Wanshan was left among the 3 of them. One could see that his face was alternating between red and white. It was obvious that he was struggling in his heart. Now that both of his brothers had agreed, if he were to oppose, then he wouldn't have anyone to help him in the future. When he thought about everything that had happened since he met the five-star army until now, his heart began to tilt. However, it didn't mean that he didn't have any worries. Both of you, have you really decided to do this? Eunuch Deng Chong has treated us well. As the eunuch of the Wanquan capital, Deng Chong was originally sent by the emperor to monitor Shi Wanshan and the others. However, because he knew how to conduct himself, everyone's relationship with each other was very good. This was very rare in the great Ming dynasty's army. Shi Wanshan was a very loyal person. Now that Deng Chong was mentioned, it was reasonable. This was because once they all surrendered to the five-star army, Deng Chong's responsibility would be great. It wasn't impossible that he would be beheaded because of this. When Deng Chong was mentioned, Ancient River's expression changed. Obviously, he also thought that his actions might bring some bad consequences to the other party. However, Ning Wenfeng wasn't worried. Instead, he chuckled and said, "What's so difficult about this? Can't we just take Eunuch Deng with us? Right now he's in the Wanquan capital. Our family members are also there. Since we have to think of a way to take them away, why would we need to take one more person?" Not bad, not bad. This time Shi Wanshan and Ancient River both nodded in agreement. After resolving the last doubt in their hearts, the three of them put away the 300,000 taels of silver and sat together to discuss the matter of joining the five-star army. Previously, the new second army was besieged and forced to submit to Baiming. Although they didn't know whether this matter was true or not, Yang Qindong's character had always been one that didn't offend others if they didn't offend him first. Since someone made a move against him first, he would definitely retaliate. This time, being able to take down Shi Wanshan and his 30,000 troops was a very obvious revenge. And all of this was thanks to the actions of Shi Heng, Sun Guang and the others. Otherwise, if they wanted to achieve their goal, who knew how much time and price they would have to pay? After Shi Wanshan and the others made their decision, Ning Wenfeng took the initiative to find Su Dai. The two of them discussed for half the night and made two important decisions. First, the five-star army would take the letter written by Shi Wanshan and the others to the Wanquan capital. The families of the three generals, the families of the main generals and Deng Chong would be taken out of the city and brought to a safe place in the grasslands. Second, due to the strength of the Baiming army and the Walla army outside the city, the location of the battle would be changed to outside Mo Bay City. At that time, the Mo Bay division would come to their aid. Although only 2 points were discussed: 1, it could solve the worries of the rear. 2, there was a way to perform meritorious deeds. Could be considered perfect. After waiting for Ning Wenfeng to return to the tent and explain the plan, early the next morning, Shi Wanshan appeared in the tent of Yeshen, the leader of the Wara army. Yeshen had just returned from a morning exercise when he heard the guards say that Shi Wanshan had come. He laughed and walked back to the tent. Knowing the purpose of Shi Wanshan's visit, Yeshen of course had to be more enthusiastic. After all, whether or not they could take down the solid walls of the Mo Bay division was difficult for their cavalry. In the end, they still needed the Baiming infantry. This was a stepping stone for him to perform meritorious deeds. The other party was also risking their lives. It was not too much to be enthusiastic. In the tent, Yeshen warmly received the two sides could be said to have a good chat. When Shi Wanshan proposed that this time, not only did he have to bring 50,000 Baiming infantry, he also had to bring the remaining 5,000 soldiers and 15,000 wounded soldiers. He said that this was the only way to ensure their determination. Yeshen was naturally happy to accept. Not only that, Yeshen also affirmed the determination of Shi Wanshan and the five-star army to fight to the death. At the same time, he also promised that once Mo Bay division was taken down, they would be credited with the most meritorious deed. He also promised that in the process the Wara army would bear the cost of food. Seeing that Yeshen had dispelled all his worries, Shi Wanshan naturally thanked him. In the end, they agreed to send out the troops 2 days later. He then walked out of the Walla camp. Seeing Shi Wanshan leave the tent, Yeshen stopped smiling and began to calculate his own plan. Regarding what had happened in the Northern Ming army as an ally, they were naturally very clear about it since their camps were not far from each other. He did not believe that Shi Wanshan wanted to bring everyone along just to express his determination to fight to the death. However, at the same time, he did not think that Shi Wanshan would surrender to the five-star army. In his opinion, it was because Shi Wanshan was worried that some people would target the soldiers he left behind after he left. That was why he had no choice but to make such a decision. Even when Shi Huanshan took the initiative to send out the troops 2 days later, Xianxia also thought that he was afraid of being schemed against by the Baiming army and had to leave in a hurry. It was because of this that when Shi Huanshan left the Baiming army camp with 70,000 soldiers, no one raised any doubts. On the contrary, everyone looked at them with pity and pity. The only pity was that the one leading the troops in Wara wasn't their leader Xianxia, but one of his 4 generals Lei. Xianxia's status and power today was inseparable from the 4 generals under his command. They were Ting Shu, Lei, Mutur and Bo Mur. Ting Shu and Mutur were killed by Yang Chendong in the battle against the 5-star army. Bo Mur had been leading the troops to stay in the Hanoi area. This was also the last path that Xianxia had prepared for himself. Other than these 3, the only one he could feel at ease leading the troops alone was Lei. Chapter 1170. Lei led 100,000 Walla cavalry and Shi Huanshan's 70,000 infantrymen towards the North Desert City in the northwest direction of the first city. More than 100,000 men and horses were moving in a grandiose manner. It was a magnificent sight. However, all of this was not what Lei, the leading general, wanted to see. As cavalry, their advantage was that they were fast enough. When they charged, they could borrow the strength of their horses to increase their strength. But now they were carrying 70,000 Baiming infantrymen, especially 15,000 of them were wounded. Although these people were not seriously injured, their speed was too slow because of their injuries. They had already walked for 5 days, but they had only walked less than 100 miles. Moreover, they did not bring a lot of provisions. If they continued at this speed, they would not be able to reach Mo Bay City before they ran out of food. After hearing the situation of the army from the ration officer below, Lei looked for Shi Huanshan with a dark face and said with an unhappy face, "General Shi, your speed is too slow. The provisions we brought are too little. This is not like what you and our leader said, that we can march 50 miles a day." Facing Lei's dissatisfied questioning, Shi Huanshan said with a bitter face, "General I don't want to, but as you can see, we are only infantrymen. We don't have horses and there are so many wounded people. We really can't walk fast. Why don't you leave some provisions and go first?" This. Lei listened to Shi Huanshan's words and his eyes turned quickly. At the current speed, it was absolutely impossible to go to Mo Bay City and launch a surprise attack. Even the provisions would become the biggest hindrance to the army. And if they could leave these infantrymen here, maybe they could really use a surprise attack to attack Mo Bay City. And if they only left a small amount of provisions, then these Baiming infantrymen would have to move faster. Even if it couldn't be used as a surprise attack, it could still speed up the march of the troops. Lei quickly came up with an idea. He pretended to be reluctant and said, "All right, if that's the case, then this general will leave us some rations and go first. However, you have to be quick. Otherwise, if you are surrounded by the 5-star army, it will be really dangerous." Lei pretended to be concerned about Shi Huanshan and said such words. He left behind a part of the provisions for Shi Huanshan, and at the same time he left behind 5,000 cavalrymen. These soldiers weren't really there to protect them, but to prevent Baiming's infantry from escaping if the situation turned bad. Lei, who thought that he had arranged everything well, led 950,000 Walla cavalry straight to North Desert City. However, he did not know that this step was equivalent to stepping into the gates of hell, and defeat was already set in stone. Shajing City. In the courtyard of the former New Second Army's military headquarters, Shi Bei was sleeping on a wooden chair in the courtyard. Since announcing his departure from the 5-star army and joining Baiming, Commander Shi Bei had been drinking wine for food. Every day he would get drunk. Most of the time he would be carried to bed by his butler and bodyguards. The smell of alcohol on his body would never dissipate. In the first few days, Su Yuan would still have time to comfort him. He even brought Rong Xiao with him. He wanted to persuade Shi Bei to get back on his feet and work for the Baiming army. But when he smelled the smell of alcohol, this idea became fainter and fainter. Until now, no one cared about him. It was as if he was leaving them to their own devices. Seeing that he was willing to live his life in a drunken stupor rather than serve the northern Ming army, Rong Xiaoxing had the thought of killing him. However, Su Yuan stopped him. In his words, Shi Bei could not die now. The new Second Army still had 3 divisions that were not completely in their hands. If something happened to Shi Bei now, it would lead to a mutiny. The consequences would be unimaginable. Now they could only wait for Shi Bei to wake up or die naturally from drinking. Regarding this, Rong Xiao naturally had a face full of displeasure. But during this period of time he also learned that Shi Bei was a person who loved his soldiers as if they were his children. In the new Second Army, there had never been a case of embezzling provisions or soldiers' pay. So many soldiers had deep feelings for this commander. If Shi Bei really killed him, he was afraid that he would not be able to clean up this mess. So he gave up. At first, Rong Xiao and Su Yuan arranged for people to keep an eye on Shi Bei to prevent him from doing anything. But as the days went by, especially the 3 cavalry divisions of the new Second Army, they were forced to hand over their horses. After they changed from cavalry to infantry, their surveillance and supervision of Shi Bei became very lax. In the afternoon of this day, Shi Bei was still drunk as he collapsed on the wooden chair. When the housekeeper came in with 4 soldiers and saw him like this, he could not help but sigh. "Come, carry the general to his room to rest." Shi Bei was carried out of the courtyard as usual. The 4 Beiming army soldiers in charge of surveillance saw this scene clearly from a big tree outside the courtyard. Then they leaned against the tree trunk and dozed off. At first they would follow him to take a look, but every time he would get drunk and not wake up. Sometimes he would even vomit everywhere, causing them to retch as well. Thus they gave up on the idea of following him. In their opinion, this was just a repeat of yesterday's story. There was nothing interesting about a drunkard. As usual, they left after Shi Bei was carried to the big bed in the inner courtyard. But unlike before, the housekeeper did not leave this time. Instead, he gently patted Shi Bei's thigh 3 times and said, "Master, no one followed you. It's very safe now." She, who had been unconscious and drunk just a moment ago, suddenly opened her eyes. There was no sign of drunkenness in her clear eyes. Without needing anyone to help him, Shi Bei straightened his body and said to the housekeeper, "Is he here?" "Yes, he's in the basement. Master, feel free to go. I'll hide here. Even if someone comes, they won't notice anything unless they're close." The housekeeper nodded. Then, without waiting for Shi Bei to say anything, he was already lying on the bed. Then he poured a jar of wine on his body. Immediately, the smell of wine filled the air and could be clearly smelled from 2 feet away. Looking at all of this, Shi Bei nodded in satisfaction. Then he gently moved the bedside table, revealing a passageway that could fit 1 person. Then his figure disappeared. There was a very secret basement in the general's residence. This was a highly confidential matter. Other than the housekeeper, even a former confidant like Su Yuan did not know about it. After Shi Bei entered the basement, he saw a candlelight lit inside. A figure was sitting at the table and reading a book. As if hearing the movement, the person began to turn around. Then his face was completely revealed in front of Shi Bei. After seeing the person's identity, Shi Bei's eyes were filled with joy. Even his footsteps could not help but quicken. At the same time he stretched out his hands. "Director Feng, why did you come here personally?" The Director Feng that Shi Bei mentioned was the director of the security bureau in Shi City, Feng Liang. As they used to work in Shi City, the 2 of them were familiar with each other. 2 days ago, the housekeeper told him that a person who claimed to be from the other side had entered the residence as a vegetable seller. However, there had been no suitable opportunity, so Shi Bei asked the housekeeper to arrange for the person to be in the basement. Today he finally had the chance to meet the person while the enemy was relaxed. He only knew that the person who came from the other side was not clear about the specific identity. He did not expect that the person who came was actually Feng Liang. How could Shi Bei not be excited? After so many days he finally saw one of his own. He, Commander Shi, you've been wronged." As soon as he saw Shi Bei, Feng Liang chuckled. At the same time he stretched out his hands to welcome Shi Bei. Just like that, 4 big hands were held tightly together. From their eyes, it could be seen that they were very excited. Feng Liang only said, "You've worked hard," which was enough to explain everything. It meant that they were very clear about Shi Bei's fake surrender, which saved a lot of effort. Thank you for your trust in me, 6th young master. However, I've already written a letter of surrender and it has been announced by Rong Xiao and the others. Could it be that the 6th young master?" Shi Bei was very touched that Feng Liang still trusted him. However, his heart was not completely at ease. After all, if it were him, it would be impossible to say that he did not have a knot in his heart. Looking at Shi Bei's nervous expression, Feng Liang chuckled and said, As expected, the sixth young master guessed correctly. He said in the telegram that as long as you say a few words to Shi Bei, he will understand. Do you want to listen to it now? Yes. Shi Bei nodded hurriedly. After he publicly surrendered to Baiming, the radio station was confiscated by Su Yuan. Shi Bei dared to do this because he knew that the other party would not use it at all. As long as he did not hand over the telegram interpreter, no matter how smart the other party was, they would not be able to understand the principle behind it. Because of this, he had not received any news from Yang Chendong for a long time. Okay, then I'll recite it to you, Commander Shi Bei. The sixth young master said, "Don't doubt the people you use and don't use the people you doubt. This is a kind of helplessness. Don't doubt the people you use and use the people you doubt. This is a kind of state. The biggest challenge and breakthrough for a leader is to use people, and the biggest breakthrough for using people is to trust people. Please give these 2 words to Shi Bei. Go back and experience it." Imitating Yang Chendong's tone, Feng Liang Bei slowly recited it and seriously listened to Shi Bei's words. Even when there was no sound in the basement, he was still immersed in the aftertaste. With his intelligence, even though he could not completely understand the meaning behind these 2 words, he had already learned a lot from the literal understanding. At least the sixth young master still trusted him. Thank you, sixth young master, for still trusting me. But I don't know what I should do next. During this period of time he had been pretending to drink wine every day, but he was also afraid of arousing suspicion, so he knew nothing about what was going on outside. However, he believed that since Feng Liang had taken the initiative to look for him, the environment and situation must have changed. Next, it should be time for him to be useful. Chapter 1171. There is indeed something that needs you to do. The sixth young master said that regardless of whether the surrender of Baiming is true or not, at least the outside world believes it. If you want to change people's impression of you, there are some things that you have to do. How about this? I'll talk to you about the situation outside. For the rest of the time, Feng Liang talked non-stop. From time to time he would interject a few words, and from time to time he would listen attentively. The 2 of them met for more than 4 hours. If it weren't for the butler lying on the bed pretending to be asleep and the fact that he usually pretended to be too good, the matter of him waking up would have been exposed. Beginning city. The attack was still going on. Moreover, with Sun Guang's continuous orders, the attack became stronger and stronger. Sun Guang would not love the soldiers as much as Shi Wanshan. In his eyes, these soldiers at the bottom were stepping stones to his glory. In order to achieve his goal, he would not care about the life and death of those people. After Sun Guang sent out a total of 5,000 people as the inspection team, the Northern Ming Empire's infantrymen under his command risked their lives and charged towards the inner city gate. Then wave after wave of them rushed to their deaths, as if they wanted to open up a gap and rush into the city. In the city the pressure was increasing. As the enemy's attack became more and more ferocious, the provisions in the city began to run out. Now not only did the ordinary soldiers have no food to eat, but even the soldiers guarding the city could not eat a full meal. The situation was getting more and more critical day by day. As the stabilizing force of the beginning city, the new army commander, Tiger's Mane, was so thin that he was almost out of shape. His eyes were deeply sunken in. Compared to the others, not only was he hungry, but he was also under great psychological pressure. Before Yang Chendong left, he handed over the military and political power of the beginning city to him. Usually he gave him so much support and trust. If he could not defend the beginning city, how could he still have the face to meet others? Commander, the Baiming army's attack is too fierce. Now our soldiers are losing a lot of people. Most of them are hungry. The original 70,000 infantry soldiers are now less than 10,000 people. Even they can't hold on. Tomorrow at most, no. After tonight, I'm afraid they won't be able to hold on. Lu Zhuo, the commander of the 1st Cavalry Division who was temporarily in charge of the defense of the city, was reporting the current military situation to Tiger's Mane in the 1st Army headquarters in the city. Can it only last for tonight? A hint of sadness flashed across Hu Mang's face. He now had tens of thousands of infantry and cavalry, but because of the lack of food they could not form enough combat power. If this continued, even if the number of troops was large, it would be useless. Yes, if the Northern Ming army continues to attack tonight, I'm afraid that by tomorrow morning, we won't be able to hold on. Lu Zhu's eyes were filled with helplessness as he spoke. Since the Beiming army changed its commander, Sun Guang had adopted a 24-hour non-stop attack method. This also doubled the pressure on the defenders of the beginning city. Young master, where is the young master? He did not ask about the situation of Lu Zhu's army, nor did he cheer him up. Without food it was useless to say more. Well, the telegraph operator has sent a telegram, but he still can't be contacted. Lu Zhu lowered his head and said. He can't be contacted? How is this possible? Didn't the young master leave the Liaodong region long ago and come here? How can he not be contacted? Someone go and find Division Commander Xianxia. This result was obviously not what Tiger's Mane wanted to hear. Seeing that the situation was getting worse, he thought of Xianxia, the person who was personally appointed by the young master to manage the money and food. He did not believe that at this time the other party would not leave any room for maneuver. The soldier agreed and walked out, but before he could leave the hospital he saw Division Commander Xianxia had already stepped into the courtyard leisurely. Division Commander Xianxia, our military commander is looking for you. You should go quickly. When he saw Xianxia it was as if he had seen a relative, and the soldier said anxiously. What's wrong? Is Tiger Head anxious? Haha, when encountering a big matter you have to be calm. Calm down. With a smile on his face, Xianxia said as he strode into the main hall. Xianxia appeared in front of him so quickly with a smile, which made Tiger's Mane very angry. Xianxia, you can still smile at this time. How can you be so heartless? Do you know that once the beginning city is breached you also have a lot of responsibility? The beginning city will be breached? Don't joke around. This place is guarded by our most powerful division commander Tiger's Mane. No one can attack it. Xianxia said with a playful expression and flattered with a smile. If Xianxia said this in the past, Tiger's Mane would definitely laugh and scold him. Everyone would just treat it as a joke and let it go. But now Xianxia still had such an attitude. Tiger's Mane was furious on the spot. Xianxia, be serious. I can tell you that this is the new military headquarters. No one is joking with you. Tiger's Mane's face was red as he scolded angrily. Xianxia could also see that the other party was anxious. He immediately returned to normal and said, Tiger's Mane, don't be anxious. I just received a telegram from the young master. How can I not be anxious? Wait, what did you just say? You received a telegram from the young master? Tiger's Mane, who was about to get angry, was suddenly stunned. Then he stared at Xianxia with wide eyes as if he wanted to eat him. It was as if he was afraid that Xianxia was joking with him. Xianxia also knew when to joke and when to be extremely serious, so he nodded heavily. Yes, I received a telegram from the young master. The young master is on his way to the beginning city. He already knows about our situation, so he ordered me to take out food to solve the problem at hand first. Everything else can be settled in half a month. Half a month? Take out food? You still have food? Tiger's Mane was extremely surprised when he heard this. His eyes were filled with endless expectations when he looked at Xianxia. Of course I do, but it's only enough for the army and the civilians to eat for half a month. This is also the reason why I haven't taken it out before, Xianxia said seriously. At the same time he gave an explanation for not taking out food. Originally, Tiger's Mane wanted to scold Xianxia for not taking out food when he had it. However, when he heard it now, he knew that this question was unnecessary. No wonder compared to others, Xianxia always looked unhurried. It seemed that he had the confidence to do so. Thinking of this, Tiger's Mane could not help but ask, You're telling me this because you know that the defending army can't hold on any longer, right? If we can hold on, will you still not tell me? Yes. Xianxia did not deny it. Although he was confident and seemed to be more unhurried than anyone else, he was always paying attention to the situation of the battle. He also knew that the 5-star army without food was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Therefore he quickly sent a telegram to Yang Chendong to ask for instructions. After receiving a definite reply, he went to the new army headquarters. After making the promise, Xianxia saw that Tiger's Mane's face was a little ugly. Although he was under Yang Chendong's instructions this time, he did not want to affect the relationship between the two. Therefore he explained, Tiger's Mane, don't be angry with me. This is all young master's idea. Long before the last time he left the city, he secretly dug a large cellar in the Yang residence with Long Wei. You also know that the quality of the soil here is quite good. Many of the vegetables and grains are stored here to be preserved. This is young master's preparation for a rainy day. So, young master already predicted that this day would come? Tiger's mane stood up in surprise. That should be the case. Actually, I only found out about it not long ago. It was the young master who told me in a secret message. Now that I think about it, if this matter was really announced earlier, then we would at most be able to eat for a few more days. If we want to cooperate with the young master to launch an all-out counterattack, we won't have the strength to do so. Xianxia nodded and said. Tiger's mane did not hear the other words clearly, but the words, all-out counterattack, clearly entered his ears. This made him instantly energized. Wait, you're saying that we have to cooperate with the young master to launch an all-out counterattack? Yes, that's what the young master said in the telegram. He also asked me to take out all the food in the cellar and distribute it to the soldiers and the people so that everyone can gradually recover their strength and be ready to go out of the city to counterattack at any time. Xianxia nodded heavily, then took out a telegram that he had just received from his arms and placed it in front of Tiger's mane's desk. As for the siege army outside the city, they had no idea what was going on inside the city. Since the first city was surrounded, no one could walk out of the city and no one could walk in from outside the city. The news was completely cut off. At dusk, Xinguang was mobilizing the soldiers. Although he was greedy, he still had some ability to fight. He had keenly felt that the 5-star army guarding the city was an arrow at the end of its flight. He decided to launch another wave of fierce attacks to break through the tower and enter the first city. Not only did Xinguang mobilize the soldiers below, but he also reported his speculation to Admiral Shiheng and the others at the same time. After hearing that the first city was about to be breached, Shiheng separately called for Fang Dingshan and Yeshen and asked their cavalry to prepare to open the city gate and charge into the city. Both of you, the first city is a flag of Bugnam of Zhou Xian in the grassland. According to our previous investigation, there are hundreds of thousands of people in the city. The army in the city is also the best of the best. Once the city gate is breached, they won't be captured without putting up a fight. At that time we'll have to see how powerful your cavalry is. Shiheng's gaze kept moving between the two of them. Please don't worry, Admiral. With the Liaodong cavalry here, we won't let any enemy escape. Fang Dingshan patted his chest and promised. Yes, our Walla cavalry wants to have a good fight with the elites of the 5-star army. Yeshen said with a slightly arrogant expression. Chapter 1172. In the past, when he fought against the 5-star army, when had he ever had the upper hand? Now he could finally pick on a soft persimmon. He had heard that there was no more food in the city, and the soldiers were all skin and bones from hunger. How could such an army have any fighting strength? If he didn't bully such an opponent, who would? The two cavalry generals were so confident. When Shiheng heard this, he naturally laughed out loud in joy. Good, since it's like this, Marquis can rest assured. Then let's wait for General Xinguang's good news. Xinguang was under a lot of pressure before. He was afraid that the Walla army would turn against him after the victory, so General Sun Hong was ordered to return to Xianxia to set up defenses. Now that he had the authority to command the troops, he felt both glory and pressure. Fortunately, the 5-star army in the city was not strong enough, which gave him new hope. Seeing that victory was right in front of him and this was going to be a great achievement, Xinguang did not feel sleepy at all. His eyes were shining and he was very excited. Unfortunately, the battle didn't end as quickly as he had imagined. At dawn, the 5-star army in the city actually counterattacked and forced the Baiming soldiers who had taken down the city walls with great difficulty back down. Xinguang was naturally enraged when he saw such an outcome. He immediately gave the order to continue attacking. No matter what, the 5-star army in the city didn't have any food. If he didn't use this opportunity to defeat them, he probably wouldn't have another chance in the future. When Shiheng, who didn't receive any good news the entire night, sent someone to ask what was going on, he used the excuse that it was the 5-star army's final radiance of the setting sun as an excuse. However, he had a bad feeling in his heart. Even the result that he thought would be a sure win had an accident. Could it be that the 5-star army in the city had other tricks up their sleeves? If that was the case, why did he appear so weak and powerless a while ago? Xinguang couldn't think of it and neither could most of the others. However, there were some who knew, such as Su Dei, who had been promoted to a major and was trusted by Xinguang. Just last night, when all the siege troops were excitedly waiting for the news of the opening of the city gate, he took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention to him to secretly meet the Xianxia Security Bureau personnel. The subordinate sent by Director Feng Liang gave a brief summary of the tasks that Su Dei had to complete. General Su, you've done a good job in dealing with Shi Wanshan and the others. Bugnam of Gojosian is very happy, but he hopes that you can stop being arrogant and make new contributions. When the day comes that you return, Bugnam of Gojosian will personally celebrate with you. Hearing that Yang Qindong valued him so much, Su Dei was very excited. Please tell Bugnam of Gojosian that I will do my best and will not let him down. The spy left and Su Dei began to seriously think about how to complete the latest task. He thought about what the spy said about instigating the relationship between Baiming and the Walla army. He fell into deep thought. Mo Bay City. He led the cavalry day and night in order to launch a surprise attack. When they were about 10 miles away from the city, the scouts sent out from the front brought back good news. The 4 gates of Mo Bay City were wide open and there was no defense at all. The scouts even saw people walking back and forth at the city gate as usual. To be able to become one of the 4 generals, He was not only very brave but also very smart. When he fought, he was not only brave but also cautious. Even though the scout had reported, he was still a little worried. He arranged for the cavalry to enter the city and contact the Wara spies in the city to make sure that there was no ambush in Mo Bay City. The scout dismounted and changed into the clothes of the Mongolian people. He then walked towards the gate. He saw all of this and his eyes flashed with excitement. He only had to wait for the scout to say that there was no problem in the city and set off a fire as a signal. He would then lead the cavalry into the city with full force. Then the great achievement would be in front of him. Under He's watchful eyes, the scout successfully entered the city and disappeared from the city gate. About an hour later, a thick smoke rose from the city. This was the signal that they had discussed before. It's done. Come, let's charge together. Victory is in front of us. He excitedly jumped onto his warhorse and shouted to his subordinates. Then nearly 100,000 cavalrymen let out an earth-shattering roar, and began to appear from the forest 3 miles away, launching a fierce attack towards the east gate of Mo Bay. With the sound of the horses' hooves hitting the ground, the east gate of Mo Bay City was already in a panic. The soldiers guarding the gate were quickly closing the gate. The people who had set up stalls at the gate were running in panic. They did not even have time to clean up the things on the ground. Go. He's eyes were filled with excitement. He did not expect that this sneak attack would be so successful. Mo Bay City did not even have the slightest bit of defense. This was a great opportunity given to him by God. He must seize it. He's movements were very fast. Under his constant urging, nearly 100,000 Walla cavalry rushed forward like a gust of wind. From afar it looked like a black tornado. No one dared to look directly at it. As the horses galloped, they were getting closer and closer to the east gate of Mo Bay City. 2 miles, 1 mile, when the patterns on the walls of the gate were clearly visible to the naked eye, even the gate that was closing was only 1/6 of the way closed. The terrified eyes of the 5-star army soldiers were infinitely magnified. All of the Walla cavalry were shouting excitedly. They seemed to see countless money, women, and power waving at them. Everything was beautiful in front of them. As long as they rushed through the gate that was not closed, everything would be theirs. Without any defense, once they entered the city, no one would be a match for nearly 100,000 cavalrymen. At that time, even if the 5-star army gathered together, they would not have the ability to turn the situation around. When that time came, they would be able to defeat them one by one. Many of the Walla cavalry had a joyful expression on their faces. They were shouting all kinds of things and waving the sabers in their hands non-stop. They were as fast as flying. They came from afar to take the victory that was about to be in their hands. Plop, 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 plop. Just when the situation seemed to be settled, an unexpected scene occurred. A huge pit appeared in front of them. The pit was more than 100 feet long and several feet deep. It was like a beast that devoured people's hearts. It opened its bloody mouth and swallowed the unprepared Walla cavalry into its mouth. They fell into the huge pit. The sudden scene caught the Walla cavalry off guard. In just one move, at least 1,000 cavalrymen fell into the pit and could not climb back up. However, the Walla cavalry was a branch of the Mongolian cavalry and was one of the strongest. They grew up on horseback and were known as the people who lived on horseback. To be able to join the Walla cavalry, it was not an exaggeration to say that they were all elites. Seeing the sudden change, many cavalrymen used their superb riding skills to force their warhorses to stop. Unfortunately, there were too many cavalrymen. Seeing that a great achievement was in front of them, everyone wanted to do something. There was almost no one who was first or last. Everyone was giving it their all. When the horses in front of them stopped, the cavalrymen behind them did not know what was happening in front of them. They continued to charge forward. Under the situation where there was no way to retreat, more and more of the Walla cavalry were squeezed into the pit and became a part of the human flesh pile. He Lei Chong was closer to the front and almost fell into the horse trap. When he realized that the situation was not right, he had already stopped his horse. At the same time, he saw a scene that made him angry. His own cavalrymen had squeezed their own cavalrymen into the pit. This kind of loss and death for no reason made him furious. He loudly shouted for everyone to retreat. However, there were too many cavalrymen and the situation was very chaotic. His shouts had long been drowned out by the cries of alarm. "Bastard, bastard men, blow the horn to retreat, retreat." In a moment of desperation, He Lei called for a guard beside him and had him blow the horn to order the army to retreat. At this time, this action was undoubtedly the right one. Shouts could be drowned out, but the horn would not stop. After hearing the bugle horn for the entire army to retreat, although many of the cavalrymen who rushed over were confused, they still stopped their warhorses and began to turn their horses around and retreat. Seeing that the dangerous situation had been stopped, He Lei patted his chest in fear. However, before he could heave a sigh of relief, an even more shocking scene occurred. Countless cavalrymen with colorful 5-star flags suddenly appeared in North Desert City. There were so many of them that it was too much for the eyes to take in. Then they were like a dark cloud pressing down from the heavens. Although they were still far away, the sound of arrows piercing through the air could be heard. If both sides were to clash, He Lei would not be afraid of any opponent. He had close to 100,000 cavalrymen. Even if they were to clash head-on, he would not be at a disadvantage. What was worse was that he had just given the order to retreat. Now that his cavalrymen were retreating, it would take some time for him to turn his horse around and charge again. It was obvious that the 5-star cavalrymen would not give them such a chance. He finally realized that everything was just a trap and ambush set up by the 5-star army. However, He Lei, who was slow to realize, could no longer form a joint force among the cavalrymen to counterattack. At this moment, there was only one thing he could do, and that was to retreat. Retreat as far as possible. Only by increasing the distance between both sides could he have the chance to regroup. Chapter 1173. Retreat, all retreat. He Lei had no choice but to give the order to retreat. This time it was not a temporary retreat but a mad retreat. It was a competition of speed. From Mo Bay City, 20,000 Malbay army and 50,000 Mongolian cavalry charged out. The 20,000 Malbay army was naturally a ranking military force. Their strength was almost enough to reach the second rank. As for the 50,000 Mongolian cavalry beside them, their true strength was probably not even a third-rank cavalry. This was because they were made up of young Mongolian men who wanted to kill the enemy but had not gone through any formal training. Their strength was not as good as the enemy. This made Mo Bay Division Commander Xin Honghai and Deputy Commander Na Ri Song very distressed. Their strength was not as good as the enemy. They could only rely on the walls of Mo Bay City. This was the natural barrier that blocked the Walla cavalry. They had already made preparations to defend the city, but everything changed because of Yang Qindong's telegram. After Xin Honghai and Na Ri Song saw the contents of the telegram, they were overjoyed and immediately made preparations. Just like when He Lei saw the gates of Mo Bay City open, it was just an illusion. In reality, everyone in the city was under control. The people who appeared in front of them were just normal Mo Bay soldiers in disguise. This was also the reason why He Lei's spies were able to light up the fireworks as soon as they entered the city. It was all because in the controlled North Desert City, there would not be any unfamiliar faces at all. As soon as the scout sent by He Lei entered the city where they could not see, he was caught by Xin Honghai and the others. Under the condition that one of his arms was cut off, he learned of his mission. This caused the smoke to rise, which completely dispelled He Lei's last doubts. The horse trap had been dug long ago. After countless changes, Xian Honghai and Na Ri Song came to the conclusion that the best time to attack was when the enemy turned around and retreated. In other words, if He Lei had been willing to let the army continue to charge forward, the horse trap would have eventually been filled. At that time, Xian Honghai and the others would have had no choice but to face the Walla army head-on. No one could say for sure whether they would have won or lost. Fortunately, He Lei was a general who loved his soldiers and made a decision that was beneficial to the Maobei army. Because of this, he was hunted down. Chase, don't stop and don't give them any chance to fight back. Xian Honghai's shout reached the ears of all the cavalrymen through the messenger's roar. The pursuit began. They did their best to catch up, not giving He Lei a chance to stop his horse and turn around. No matter how strong a cavalry unit was, if they were not given the opportunity and distance to charge, they would not be able to display their advantage. Under the pursuit, the Walla cavalry could not even display 30% of their usual strength. Occasionally, some cavalrymen who were about to be caught up tried to fight back, but in the end, because there were too few of them, their strength was too weak, and they were drowned by the Maobei and Mongolian cavalrymen and died regretfully. He Lei, who was running among the troops, would occasionally look back. When he saw his soldiers being caught up and killed by the enemy cavalry, he was naturally furious. But he knew very well that there was nothing he could do. He had lost the initiative and the army was in the process of fleeing. He had no way to fight back. Even if he gave the order or even if he led his troops to charge back, it would be a suicide mission. There was no better way. He could only run and hope that they could use their better horsemanship to escape the enemy's pursuit. At that time he would gather his main force and charge back. He could already see that the Maobei army and Mongolian troops chasing him were not that strong, and were far inferior to the elite Walla cavalry. If they were to fight head-on, he had at least an 80% chance of winning. One side ran, the other side chased, and the distance of 100 miles was covered in a few hours. With the passage of time, the distance between the two sides continued to widen. It was already difficult for the cavalrymen to catch up to the enemy and be hacked to death by a flurry of blades. He Lei breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, he calculated the distance between the two sides. Once he felt that the distance was far enough and he could launch a counterattack, he would be the first to stop his horse. That would be the time for him to teach the enemy a lesson. He Lei was still waiting for an opportunity, but how could he know that the opportunity did not exist for him at all? This was because when they had run around 120 li and were about to open up enough distance to counterattack, they had already arrived at a place 50 li away from the Three Peaks mountain. Just as they reached the side of the mountain, arrows were shot out, hitting the vanguard of the cavalry. For a moment the arrows fell like rain and the horses lost their footing. The sudden attack caught the Walla army off guard. After losing thousands of cavalry, even more cavalry rushed out of the forest, holding bright 5-star flags. The leader was the Far Eastern Army's commander, Qin Bo. When He Lei and his army passed by the Three Peaks mountain, Qin Bo had already led the 40,000 cavalry to gather here. However, he did not immediately charge out. Instead, he followed Yang Qindong's instructions and waited for the enemy to be defeated so that he could intercept them on the way back. Everything was as Yang Qindong had expected. He Lei had been tricked and was defeated. When they arrived at the foot of the Three Peaks mountain, it was time for Qin Bo to beat a drowning dog. The sudden appearance of the 40,000 cavalry carrying the 5-star army's flag was like a heavy hammer to the chest, dealing a heavy blow to the Walla cavalry. If it was said that they had the advantage of numbers before, then with the appearance of the Far Eastern Army, the difference in numbers between the two sides had undergone a qualitative change. Out of the 95,000 cavalrymen, they had lost at least 10,000 during their escape. In addition to the surprise attack by the Far East Army, they had lost another 5,000 cavalrymen, leaving them with less than 80,000 soldiers. Naturally, there was a gap between them and the 5-star Corps, which had 110,000 soldiers. Their numbers were inferior and they had fallen into the enemy's trap. At this moment He Lei felt like he could not cry out to the heavens. At this moment, any action of fighting would only be sending them to their deaths. The only thing they could do now was to escape and to continuously escape. Retreat, don't continue fighting, retreat. He Lei's heart was dripping blood as he shouted loudly. His personal guards were constantly blowing the bugle horn to retreat. After losing more than 10,000 riders, the Walla cavalry finally broke out of the encirclement and continued to flee to the east. Chase. The two generals, Xin Honghai and Qin Bo, did not hesitate at all and decisively gave the order to continue the chase. For them, the battle had just begun. With Qin Bo's far eastern army blocking the way, the distance between the two sides was once again shortened. The Walla cavalry was beaten until they were scared witless. When they could finally see the 70,000 Baiming army infantry led by Zhou Xian, there were less than 70,000 cavalry left. From afar he saw many figures in front of him. He saw the Baiming dragon flag raised high, and he also saw the 5,000 Walla cavalry guarding the Baiming dragon flag. "Ha, the heavens are helping me." He laughed loudly. When he saw the Baiming army infantry, he seemed to see a new hope. With the help of these infantry, it was enough to buffer the enemy. That way he would have the opportunity to reorganize his army and launch a counterattack. He swore that this time he would chase down the 5-star army cavalry and flatten North Desert City. He would even massacre the entire city. He wanted to tell everyone what the consequences of angering the Walla cavalry were. "Quick, prepare the bows and arrows. Stop the 5-star army cavalry." He kept increasing the speed of his horse. Although his mount was almost at its limit, he did not feel the slightest bit of heartache. He just wanted to be one step ahead and tell the Baiming army to get ready. Then he would launch a full counterattack. As expected of one of the 4 generals chosen by Xian, He's horse was extremely fast. He was at least 30 meters ahead of the messenger and rushed to the front of the Baiming army. Following these shouts, countless soldiers of the Baiming army raised the bows in their hands. A murderous aura came from them. Facing the scene of tens of thousands of cavalry waiting to be shot, He was not only not afraid but also excited. These were all his allies, his friends. Next he just needed to wait for the arrows to pass and disrupt the enemy's pursuit formation. Then it would be time for them to launch a full counterattack. He still had a smile on his face. He did not notice that a general of the Baiming army was aiming a strong bow at him. This person was General Ancient River. He had fought with the Walla cavalry countless times. He did not know how many soldiers and trusted generals had died in their hands. This hatred was not something that could be erased by the emperor's decree or by the fact that both sides were allies. Previously he was thinking about the big picture. Even if he wanted to, he could not do anything excessive. But now he was a member of the 5-star army. It was reasonable for him to make a move now. At the same time, it was also a great achievement. The arrow kept moving, aiming at He's chest, who had stopped his horse with a smile on his face. Then his left hand that was holding the arrow's tail loosened. The arrow with the iron tip made a sound as it pierced through the air and flew towards He's chest. Ha! While he was still laughing and imagining the scene of victory in his mind, a black shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. Then before he could react, he felt a pain in his chest. The arrow's tail was still shaking as it pierced through his chest. This was precisely the arrow shot by Gu He. It hit the target, the unguarded He's chest. He had never thought that this would be the result. He lowered his head and saw the red blood coming out of his chest. He used all his strength to point at the Baiming army. With a plop, he fell off his horse. One of the 4 generals that Xian valued the most, He closed his eyes and followed in the footsteps of Ting Shu and Mu Tu. He died like this in front of all the Walla cavalry. This scene shocked them so much that many soldiers could not help but stop. They did not even realize that they were surrounded by the Far Eastern Army, Mabe Army and Mongolian Army. It was very difficult to defeat them, let alone kill them all and spread the news. But now it seemed that the mission was completed just like that. Although his side also paid a certain price in this battle, for example, thousands of Mongolian cavalrymen died, and more than 5,000 Baiming cavalrymen died. But compared to the results of the battle, there was no doubt that it was a great victory. Definitely. Next, the task of cleaning the battlefield will be handed over to General Shi. Commander Xin, we still have to hurry to the beginning city. Qin Bo's face also showed a satisfied smile. But he didn't forget that this was only half of the mission. The most important step in this battle was to meet the beginning city. Well said. Generals, take care. Shi Wanshan also knew that it was impossible for his infantry to maintain the same speed as the cavalrymen. But just as Shi Wanshan's voice fell, a rider came from not far away. The rider was dressed in silver armor. It was Shi Wanshan's deputy, Ancient River. "Generals, I also want to go to the battlefield with you to kill the enemy, but please help me." "Ancient River, don't make trouble," Shi Wanshan shouted when he saw that Ancient River wanted to interfere. "General, I'm not making trouble. This time we seized a lot of Walla cavalry's horses. I have just mobilized 10,000 soldiers. As long as they are given horses, they are willing to kill the enemy with me. General, how many small shoes did those people put on us before? Now is the time for us to take revenge." Gu, he said with his eyes wide open as if he was unwilling to admit defeat. Seeing that Ancient River was determined, Qin Bo looked at him with appreciation. "Not bad, you are a tiger, General. I think you can do it. Come, bring me a commander's cloak." The bodyguard immediately found a large black cloak, and Qin Bo personally handed it to Ancient River. "General Ancient, to be able to wear a cloak of this level, you are at least a commander in the 5-star army. I believe you will not disgrace it." "Thank you." Ancient River was excited. He stretched out his hands and took it. With a shake of his hands, the cloak spread with the wind and hung on his body. Then he looked at Shi Wanshan with excitement and said, "General, do you think I am awe-inspiring?" Awe-inspiring. Looking at Ancient River's attire, Shi Wanshan knew that he could not stop him. In addition, Commander Qin Bo also expressed his opinion, so he could not stop him. He rode his horse forward and patted Ancient River's shoulder, saying, "Be careful. To be able to fight together with the 5-star army is my fortune. General, don't worry, the news of victory will come soon." He laughed heartily as he turned around and left. He wanted to tell this good news to his 10,000 cavalry brothers. Qin Bo, Xan Honghai and the others also left very quickly. Looking at the back view of over 100,000 cavalry soldiers leaving, Ning Wenfeng walked to Shi Wanshan's side and said, General Ancient River is leading the vanguard for us. This is a good thing for us. Of course, I know that he wants to gain more battle merit so that we can have more room for improvement after joining the 5-star army. I also know that ever since we paid 300,000 taels of silver for him, he has been under a lot of psychological pressure. However, there are always casualties in a war. I just hope that he can come back safely." Shi Wanshan sighed and said. Ning Wenfeng nodded heavily. "We have been through many trials and tribulations. We have to believe in Brother Ancient River. He will definitely be fine." In the Baiming army's barracks at the foot of the Origin City. Under the continuous siege, not only was the Origin City not broken, but it seemed to be more solid. At least the 5-star army in the city resisted more than before. This rather unusual action made many people very surprised, and also had a feeling of puzzlement. Su Dei, like many generals, often showed a thoughtful expression. However, everyone didn't know that his thoughts were different from everyone else. He had been thinking about how to complete the task given by Yang Chendong and how to instigate the relationship between the Baiming army and the Walla army. As usual, he walked out of his tent. Unlike some people who like to think about things behind closed doors, Su Dei liked to look around and keep walking to find the answer to the question. Perhaps no one in the entire barracks knew better than him what happened in the grassland of the North Desert 3 days ago. Who would have thought that 100,000 Walla cavalry would be defeated like this? In the end, only a few hundred of them escaped. This would be a big earthquake and completely tear apart the alliance between the Baiming army and the Wara army. This was undoubtedly something that the 5-star army hoped to see. Now what he needed to do was to not give the two sides a chance to argue. Thinking and walking, he unconsciously came to the junction between the Baiming army and the Wara army. What he saw was the Walla cavalry cooking. The smell of meat was still far away, but it had already drifted over. When the smell entered his nose, Su Dei instinctively twitched his nose. Then an idea came which made the corners of his mouth curl up slightly. And on the same night, the important place where the Baiming army stored grain and fodder suddenly caught fire. Although it didn't involve too much grain because of the timely rescue, it still scared the Admiral Marquis Wuxia Shiheng. The grain was sufficient, but it was so laborious to attack the first city. He really didn't dare to imagine how the war would go on without grain and fodder. Therefore, in the general tent, after he severely punished the grain officer 50 times, He ordered people to investigate the matter to see what caused the fire. Zhou Xian even had a thought. Could the fire be set by the 5-star army? The general was angry, and the efficiency of the people under him was much faster. Just at dawn the next day, the general sent to investigate reported that someone saw 2 Walla soldiers appear around the grain storage last night. This news made Zhou Xian's face change greatly. Is the news reliable? Did the 2 people catch them? Reporting back to Marquis, no. You also know that we are allies now. Besides, it was dark at that time and I didn't see their faces clearly. I only recognized them as Walla soldiers from their clothes. The general in charge of the investigation bowed his head and answered. But he would never have thought that the 2 shadows were just Su Dei and his most trusted soldiers in disguise. This was also the simplest way that Su Dei thought of to drive a wedge between the 2 armies. Zhou Xian didn't know this. What he now learned was that Walla soldiers wanted to set fire to his grain and fodder. What did they want to do? Did they want to fall out with him? Come, immediately invite General Fong and General Xin. This was a matter of great importance, and it was far from what he could decide alone. He now needed to find someone to discuss what to do if this matter was true. After a while, Liaodong General Fong Dingshan and Datong Vice Chief Xin Guang appeared in the general tent. The 2 of them learned the truth of the matter from Zhou Xian. No way, we are allies now. Xin Guang exclaimed after hearing the news. Obviously he never thought of this result. Allies? That's only for now. Not in the past or in the future. Fong Dingshan looked indifferent and didn't seem to be surprised. Chapter 1175. General Fong, what do you mean? Zhou Xian looked at Fong Dingshan's expression and asked in a puzzled tone, but his expression was natural. It was obvious that he was thinking the same thing. What else? If it weren't for the 5-star army, we would have been mortal enemies with the Walla cavalry. The reason why we joined forces is because the current 5-star army is easier to bully. Once they are eliminated, I'm afraid that our cooperation will end. It's inevitable that we will fall out. After Fong Dingshan said this, he narrowed his eyes and looked at Zhou Xian and Xin Guang. He didn't believe that these 2 people didn't think of this. In fact, Zhou Xian had already received the decree of the Daizong Emperor. He could join forces with the Wara army, but it was only a limited alliance. He had to be prepared to fall out with them at any time. After all, when it came to hatred, the hatred between the 2 sides was far greater than the hatred between Baiming and Yangchendong. In the past, the Wara army used to harvest grain at the border of the Great Ming grassland. Now that the Great Ming dynasty was divided into the north and the south, they were the initiators. Not long ago, Fong Dingshan led 70,000 Liaodong cavalry to harvest grain in the Wara army's territory, killing their people and stealing their livestock. It was impossible to say that there was no hatred in everyone's heart. Zhou Xian was naturally very clear about these things. He knew that the hatred between the 2 sides was already irreconcilable, but there was one thing he couldn't figure out. Why did the Wara army choose to attack them at this time? Did they want to join forces to deal with the 5-star army? Zhou Xian raised the question in his heart and then looked at Fong Dingshan, wanting to see what the other party thought. Marquis, don't look at me. The reason why they did this is probably because they think that we can't take down the first city. Since that's the case, our allied forces will have to disperse sooner or later. If they can cause us some trouble at this time, that's naturally good. By the way, Marquis, please don't forget that the Shajing city and Jingzhou city that we're occupying used to belong to the Tile tribe. Speaking of this matter, Fong Dingshan did not even hesitate. It was clear that he was not optimistic about this alliance. This had a lot to do with Fong Dingshan's personality. He was originally a very arrogant person. In his eyes, only Baiming was orthodox. The 5-star army, the World Wara, and even the Southern Ming dynasty would all submit to Baiming soon. His mission was to conquer them, defeat them, and establish an immortal achievement. With such thoughts in mind, he had long regarded everyone as his enemy. In that case, it would be normal for the enemy to do anything to harm him. There was nothing strange or suspicious about it. If these thoughts were known by Su Dei, he would be very happy. This proved that his plan to sow discord had succeeded. You're right. It seems that we have to be careful of them. By the way, General Xin, how confident are you in taking down the first city? Zhou Xian nodded in agreement. What Fong Dingshan said was roughly the same as what he thought. However, there was one difference. In his eyes, the 5-star army was a bigger enemy. No matter how strong the world Wara was, they were only able to move freely on the grassland. In contrast, Bugnam of Gojosian had the ability to penetrate the hinterland of Biming. This was what he needed to guard against the most. When he thought of Bugnam of Gojosian, it reminded him of the first city. He wanted to know how confident he was in taking down the first city. It should be soon. This time Guang was not as confident as before. It was not because of anything else. It was because the difficulty of attacking the city had increased over the past few days. The 5-star army that was guarding the city seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. They began to regain their vitality and were not as easy to deal with as they were in the beginning. However, with the advantage of besieging the city, he firmly believed that the other party would not be able to hold on for long. Therefore, it was certain that they would be able to take down the city, provided that they had enough time. Then let's speed up. Shiheng did not intend to urge Guang. These days the momentum of the siege was still very fierce. As the commander, he knew very well in his heart. Of course, he did not know that there was not much time left for him. By the way, General Fong, what do you think we should do next against the world Wara? Shiheng did not forget the purpose of asking the two of them to discuss this matter. What else can we do? We'll just have to deal with whatever comes our way. In the future we will increase the number of soldiers guarding the provisions. In addition, I will also send people to keep an eye on them. Fong Dingshan said with a relaxed expression. If the other party still had 150,000 cavalrymen, he would be nervous. But now there were only 50,000 of them, which was even less than him. He was really not afraid. This was also because the emperor did not give an order. Otherwise he would have dared to kill these people. Fong Dingshan said it so casually that Shiheng also breathed a sigh of relief. This was the advantage of having strong soldiers. When dealing with things they would have a lot more confidence. Well, then we have to pay attention to the world Wara's every move at all times. Of course, the main thing is to attack the city. As long as we take down the first city, even if they have other ideas, they will have to hold back. When we deal with the 5-star army, it will be time to go back and deal with them. General Tsin, please pay attention to this point. After going around in circles, they finally returned to the problem of how to take down the first city. Yes, I will do my best. But now we are a little short of troops. Can we see if we can transfer some from the rear? Guang asked tentatively. These days, although the 5-star army that was guarding the city was under great pressure, they also suffered a lot of losses. The number of wounded had exceeded 30,000, and the other soldiers were also exhausted. If they could get a fresh army to join them now, then they would have a greater chance of taking down the city. Shiheng was the military commander personally appointed by the emperor. He was in charge of all the military affairs at the front line. Only he had the final say on things like transferring troops. After hearing Guang's request, he asked very seriously, General Tsin, how many more troops do you need? Can you guarantee that you can take down the first city? Hearing that there was hope, Guang said with some excitement, there is no problem in taking down the first city. I can feel that the enemy's strength has been greatly reduced. Now it is just a little bit away. If Marquis can give me an additional 100,000 troops, then I am confident that I can take down the city within 5 days. If it is not possible, I am willing to offer my head. This was equivalent to giving a military order. If there were really 100,000 fresh troops, they could attack from the 4 city gates regardless of day or night. It was really possible to take down the city in 5 days. So confident? It's good. Marquis will immediately give the order to transfer troops. Shiheng was also very excited when he heard this. Although the transfer of 100,000 infantrymen was not part of the plan, it would be a great achievement if they could take down the first city. Not only would he be able to report to the emperor, but he would also be able to obtain a great achievement. Thank you, Hou Yi. Hearing that the matter was approved, Guang was also very excited. The meeting ended. Shiheng found his messenger and took out the tiger troop talisman. He asked them to go to Tulu City, Sambulachuan City, Shajing City, and Jingzhou City to transfer troops. Tulu City was the fortress of the rear base of the Biming army. There were originally 50,000 soldiers there. They were responsible for guarding the provisions, and if there were any changes they would be reinforcements. When Shiheng gave the order, 40,000 of the 50,000 soldiers were transferred. Sambulachuan City had fewer soldiers. There were only 30,000 soldiers guarding the city. Among them, there were 10,000 wounded soldiers who had retreated from the front line. Shi Heng gave the order and 20,000 healthy soldiers were transferred away, leaving only 10,000 injured soldiers behind. If there were no external forces, there wouldn't be any problems. There were 60,000 soldiers out of 100,000. The last 40,000 soldiers could only be sent to Shajing City and Jingzhou City. This made it difficult for Rongshao, who was in charge here. As a businessman, he knew that if he wanted to expand his business, he could not do without his own people in the imperial court. How could he be considered one of his own people? Of course, it was not as good as being an official himself. Once he became a pillar of the country, who would dare to cause trouble for him in the future? After a discussion with the Rong family, Rongshao finally gave Shi Heng 200,000 taels of silver. In addition to his contribution in successfully instigating the rebellion of the two cities, he was promoted to general of the two cities. He became Shi Heng's favorite person. When Shi Heng gave the order, Rongshao knew that his chance to perform had come. He called Su Yuan over and said with a troubled expression, "The opportunity is here. However, when we negotiated with the Spirit-Severing Army, we said that they wouldn't go against the 5-star army. What do you think we should do?" This. Su Yuanjiang furrowed his brows. After following Shabi for such a long time, he knew the general's temper. He was a man of his word. Based on how much Yang Chendong valued him, even without the agreement, Yang Chendong probably wouldn't send troops out due to guilt, let alone with the agreement in hand. However, Su Yuan knew that Rongshao didn't call him over to see him shake his head. Rongshao wanted him to come up with a plan. Well, the Han people have a saying, times are different now. The situation is different, so the original agreement will have to be changed. What's more, he's been drinking wine every day, and with Wu Xiaoyi's death, the other 3 teachers have a lot of opinions about him. I think it's better to bypass him and talk to the teachers directly. Is that okay? Rongshao's eyes lit up when he heard that. Why not? How about this? I will talk to the 3 teachers first. However, I would like to ask Lord Rong to remove the people who are monitoring the 3 division masters, as well as those who are responsible for sowing discord. Since we are here to talk, we must show our sincerity. Su Yuan thought for a moment and proposed his idea. That's not a problem. Rongshao agreed. He had no other choice. Although the method of sowing discord had some effect now, as long as he was given time, he was confident that he could take over the military power of the 3 division commanders. Then he could find a reason to arrest them. However, with Shi Heng's order and a short 3 days, he did not have the patience to wait for the next batch of soldiers. Chapter 1176. Su Yuan left Rongshao's place and went straight to the residence of Kong Ji, the commander of the new 2nd Army's 1st Cavalry Division in Shajing City. In the Kong residence, Kong Ji was very surprised when he found out that Su Yuan was outside the residence and wanted to see him. He couldn't figure out why the other party wanted to see him at this time. Well, since he's here, I'll invite him in. Kong Ji and Su Yuan sat opposite each other in the living room of the residence. The other bodyguards were all removed from the living room. This was Su Yuan's request. After all, he was here to ask for help. Not only would he lose face if he said some soft words in front of so many people, he was also afraid that he would be put on the spot. Without anyone else around, Su Yuan didn't care about his reputation and directly made his request. "Mr. Kong, I'm sorry for offending you before. It wasn't my idea to send people to monitor your residence. And those people who tried to sow discord in the division weren't sent by me either. I've already protested to Rongshao about this matter. He has already promised that these people will all be recalled. I hope that this matter won't affect our friendship." Kong Ji was shocked that Su Yuan was so humble right from the start. It wasn't a big deal to monitor his own people, and he didn't intend to do anything when the time wasn't right. But those people who tried to sow discord really gave him a headache. They spread unfavorable words about him everywhere in the division. At first it was fine. With his usual character, no one believed those words. But some things were afraid of being repeated. If he said too much, it was inevitable that people would believe him. Over time, there were people in the division who started to have ulterior motives. It was just that they didn't have enough evidence. In addition, this matter was instigated by Rongshao. Even if he wanted to make a move, he didn't have the right opportunity. Originally, he thought that if this continued, he wouldn't be able to regain the command power when he really needed to use the army one day. He didn't expect that Su Yuan would solve all these problems and worries. This was an unexpected surprise. Of course, since he did such a big thing for him, he must have a favor to ask of him. Kang Ji didn't believe that a pie would fall from the sky. So although he was happy, he pretended to be calm and said, "Mr. Su, we're not outsiders. Just tell me, what price do you need me to pay?" "Mr. Kang, you're really straightforward. It's like this. The military operation to attack the first city is going smoothly, and it looks like we will be able to take it in a few days. Considering the problem of maintaining the safety of that place in the future, Admiral Shi Heng ordered our new Second Army to send 20,000 soldiers to assist. The mission given was to send 40,000 soldiers. Rong Xiao had 20,000 soldiers. Now that there were only 20,000 soldiers left, he had to rely on the new Second Army. With the current strength of the new Second Army, there were a total of 4 divisions. If each division could send 5,000 soldiers, then the number would be enough. When he heard that the beginning city would be conquered in a few days, Kang Ji's heart started to beat more frequently and faster. If the beginning city was really conquered, then when would he be able to return to the 5-star army? Fortunately, Su Yuan's next words made Kang Ji heave a sigh of relief. At the same time, he also saw the other party's real intention. Baiming did not have enough soldiers at the front line. They must have fallen into a difficult situation when attacking the beginning city. Otherwise, they would not have come to beg him. After knowing the other party's purpose, Kang Ji felt relieved and started to pick up his gun. "Mr. Su, I'm sure you still remember the agreement that the military commander signed with you. The first clause is that we can't be enemies with the 5-star army anymore. We were forced to surrender. We've already let down Bugnam of Gojosian. How can we go against our conscience and be enemies with them? We really can't do such a thing." Su Yuan revealed an expression that said, "As expected." He knew that the other party would say this. Then he smiled and said, "Mr. Kong, you've misunderstood. Didn't I say just now? These troops are not going to fight with the 5-star army. They are only responsible for the defense of the beginning city in the future. You also know that even if there is no 5-star army on the grassland, there is still the Walla cavalry and the Mongolian cavalry from various tribes. They are not so easy to deal with. The beginning city is such a big city in front of us. If we don't have enough troops to defend it, we will face the danger of losing it at any time." The reason given by Su Yuan was very suitable. Kang Ji could not find a reason to refute it. However, their division only had more than 8,000 people. If 5,000 people were transferred away all of a sudden, their strength would be reduced by more than half. This was not what he wanted to see. It was certainly a good thing to be able to remove the people who were monitoring him and spreading rumors in the army. However, how to agree to the other party's request without being heartbroken was what Kang Ji needed to consider. He did not speak for a long time. He looked at Su Yuan and asked anxiously, "Mr. Kong, say something. Sir Rong Xiao is still waiting for the news." "Well, it's really impossible to transfer 5,000 people from a division." Kang Ji had a rough idea in his mind in a short period of time. He finally spoke. As soon as he spoke, Su Yuan was immediately unhappy. "Mr. Kong, what do you mean? I just said that we are not going to be enemies with the 5-star army. Wait, Mr. Su, wait for me to finish. You just said that these troops are not rushing to the beginning city to be enemies with the 5-star army. They are responsible for defending the city after taking it down. If that's the case, what do you think about this? I'll transfer 2,000 people from the division to you. Then you'll recruit 3,000 able-bodied men from the city as soldiers. In this way, won't you make up 5,000 people? The advantage of doing this is that it won't affect the combat ability of our new Second Army. Can also help you complete the mission. Isn't it the best of both worlds? Besides, it's just a mission to defend the city. It's not difficult. Even if they haven't undergone any training, they can still do it well. What do you think?" Kang Ji came up with a way to get the best of both worlds. He needed to ensure the combat ability of a division. The organization could be incomplete, but they could be pulled and fought when there was a mission. Therefore, he had no choice but to come up with this plan. Originally, Su Yuan wanted to say something. However, when he heard this method, his attitude became a little hesitant. Since he did not reject it immediately, there was a way. Kang Ji added fuel to the fire and said, "Mr. Su, why does Baiming value us so much? Isn't it because our army has a certain level of combat ability? If we don't have this characteristic, who will still value us? By that time, It'll be time to get rid of the donkey after it has outlived its usefulness. If that's the case, we won't have a good ending. I'm sure Mr. Su won't have a good time either. Factions are the most important thing in the army. A good man has 3 factions. Kang Ji said these words from Su Yuan's perspective. This made Su Yuan, who was originally hesitant, finally make up his mind. Not bad. Mr. Kong, you're indeed a talented general with both wisdom and courage. You're right. How about this? I'll go talk to Mr. Rong Xiao now. Oh, by the way, about the 2,000 people that the 1st Cavalry Division will send out, please make early preparations. Sure. I'll make the arrangements now. Kang Ji thought about how some people in the division were dissatisfied with him. Some of them were simply spreading rumors. He didn't know how to deal with these people. Now that there was an opportunity, it would be good to get rid of them so that he could better control the troops. Su Yuan left in a hurry. He did not know how he told Rong Xiao, but the matter was settled. Then the recruitment of soldiers in the 2 cities began. They were not working for the 5-star army, which was for the people. The people were not very enthusiastic about joining the army. In the end, there was no other way. The recruitment became a recruitment of able-bodied men. Who asked Shi Heng to be so anxious? Rong Xiao, who wanted to show off, had to do things well. Not only that, he also decided to personally send 40,000 troops to Beginning City to curry favor with Shi Heng. Under Beginning City, the siege was still ongoing. Since the military order was made in front of Shi Heng and Fang Dingshan, under the command of Sun Guang, the attacks became fiercer and fiercer. Several times their soldiers rushed up the city tower. Although they were eventually suppressed, at least they saw the dawn of victory. The siege was very lively. The Wara war camp under the city was unusually quiet. This kind of siege warfare was not suitable for cavalry. They had been under the city for a long time and some of the cavalry were even lazy. But all of this changed with the return of a few Walla cavalry. They were the Walla warriors who followed General He Lei to the battle. They were lucky enough to escape. Naturally, they had to return to the camp and report everything they saw and experienced to their leader. In fact, they were not the only ones who returned. Not far from the camp, there were hundreds of cavalry waiting there. Everyone heard Shi Wanshan's shout and knew that Baiming had joined forces with the 5-star army. They were worried that once they returned, they would alert the enemy, so they sent a few representatives back to the camp. In the leader's tent, Yes Hen received these deserters. After learning that He Lei died in battle and only a few hundred of the cavalry escaped, he was so angry that he flipped the desk in front of him and said angrily, "You said that the reason why we lost was because the Baiming army stabbed us in the back, right?" "Yes, leader. We saw it with our own eyes and experienced it personally. Otherwise, with our fast horses, no matter how many enemies there are, they can't stop us." Several soldiers who escaped knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Good. What a good Baiming army. I trusted them so much, but they dared to play tricks behind our backs. I'm going to find Shi Heng and ask him for an explanation. Yes Hen could not suppress his anger and was about to leave the tent. "You can't." A figure blocked his way and then that person knelt on the ground. "Leader, you can't do that. Baiming and the 5-star army have joined forces. If we go to them now, not only will it not have the slightest effect, but it will also alert them. If we don't do it well, they will do harm to our leader." The person who spoke was the deputy general that Yes Hen had just promoted, Chao Lu. In Mongolian it meant stone. Chapter 1177. This person was very burly and had good skills. More importantly, he was not only a boorish man, but he also had his own ideas when he encountered problems. Ever since he was discovered by Yes Hen, he was promoted to be a deputy general by his side, in charge of his own safety. Sometimes he would even lead troops to become a general. When Chao Lu blocked the way, Yes Hen wanted to kick him away out of anger. However, when he heard that the Baiming army would be a threat to his safety, he quickly calmed down. Whether it was the battle with Tuotuo Buhua or the battle with the 5-star army, although he had failed many times, he still lived until now because of his carefulness. For such a person, if you asked him to take risks, he would never do such a stupid thing. Since he could not meet Shi Heng, there were some things that he could not figure out what was going on. He could not help but feel a little unwilling. He suppressed his anger and asked Chao Lu, "Let me ask you, do you think the Baiming army and the 5-star army have really joined forces?" "I don't know, but I don't think so. If that's the case, Why are they attacking the beginning city so fiercely? Moreover, they did not ask for our help from the beginning to the end. This makes no sense. Chao Lu shook his head. That's right, that's what I think as well. If the Baiming army and the five-star army have really joined forces, what they should do is to besiege us instead of acting for us. Besides, their deaths and injuries are real. I don't believe that they will betray us. Xianxia nodded and agreed with Chao Lu's words. Although he was puzzled when he turned around and saw the few cavalry warriors kneeling on the ground, he became suspicious again. He knew these people and 2 of them were He Lei's bodyguards. They would never lie to him. Then who was telling the truth? To be able to become the leader of the Wara, Xianxia was indeed smart. He quickly thought of a way. He said to Chao Lu beside him, Go to Xianxia's tent. Don't tell him anything else. Just tell him that I have caught a cold and am sick. Ask him to come and see me. When he heard that he was going to Xianxia's tent, Chao Lu's heart skipped a beat. He thought that the leader wanted him to question the other party. However, when he heard that it was just a message, he immediately felt relieved. Leader, you mean to bring Xianxia to our camp and then you can question him yourself? Not bad. He nodded his head in satisfaction. He was happy for Chao Lu's intelligence. At the same time he said, I want to ask him myself. What's going on? If this is really a trap set by the 5-star army, then he needs to give me an explanation and give me enough compensation. 100,000 elite cavalrymen, just thinking about it makes my heart ache. After years of constant battles, Xianxia's strength had been greatly reduced. Now he only had 50,000 cavalrymen with him and 80,000 cavalrymen in the Hanoi headquarters. In total he only had 130,000 cavalrymen left. This time he had lost nearly half of his forces. Anyone would be heartbroken. After knowing Xianxia's intention, Chao Lu knew what to do. He agreed and left the tent. In view of the fact that the provisions were almost burned, Xianxia increased the surveillance of the Walla army camp. When a few cavalrymen suddenly entered the Walla army camp, he became alert. Although he didn't know where these cavalrymen came from or what they wanted to do, he instinctively became vigilant. At this moment Chao Lu came. Using Xianxia's illness as an excuse, he asked Xianxia to go to the Walla army to discuss the next step of the battle plan. Oh, Leader, Xianxia is sick. Is there anything wrong? Sai, how could such a strong body get sick just like that? How about this? I'll immediately send people to bring a skilled doctor. As for Marquis, he's really busy with military affairs, so he won't go. Just like how Xianxia didn't dare to come to his tent, Xianxia was also afraid of death. Who knows if he's really sick, or if he's just trying to trick me to go over and harm me. Not only did Xianxia not go, but he also wanted to send a doctor with him. Chao Lu, who was afraid of being exposed, of course didn't agree. He could only say that the leader's illness wasn't serious. The Walla army also had their own doctors, so they didn't need to trouble Xianxia. As for the discussion of the battle plan, they would wait until their leader recovered. Chao Lu came in a hurry and left in a hurry. Looking at his back, Xianxia coldly snorted. This is clearly a trick to trick me into going to your camp. Seems like there really is something wrong with the Wara army. Someone go invite General Fong over for the discussion. Not to mention that Xianxia was already on guard. When Chao Lu returned to the camp and told him what happened, Xianxia's expression changed again and again. So, Xianxia is guilty and doesn't dare to appear? Yes, leader, that's the feeling I get. Seems like there really is something wrong with the Baiming army. Chao Lu expressed his feelings. But why would they do this? Don't they know that compared to us the 5-star army is their biggest enemy? If we let it continue, sooner or later Baiming will regret it. Xianxia didn't understand and sighed. Then he shook his head and said, Forget it. Since we're not on the same side, there's no point in staying here. Let's just leave. Knowing that there was danger, Xianxia wouldn't stay here and be a live target. Leaving was what he thought he should do. But he didn't expect that Chao Lu would stop him. Leader, this matter can't be rushed. We just went to find Xianxia during the day. If we prepare to retreat now, they'll definitely notice. I don't think the Baiming army has any intention of targeting us right now. Why don't we wait and see? We'll leave when they relax. This way we'll be safer. Knowing that Hu Lu was right, Xianxia nodded in agreement. That's good too. In order to confuse them, we'll tell them that I'm sick and won't be around for 2 days. But you have to find those generals in private and tell them to prepare to retreat at any time. As long as we can leave here safely, some things should be thrown away. After sighing, Xian came to the bed in the tent and laid down. He was really going to pretend to be sick. In the Baiming army's main tent, Shi Heng found Fang Dingshan and told him about Hu Lu's intentions. Then he asked for his opinion. General Fang, in your opinion, does Xian want to harm Marquis? Fang Dingshan didn't respect Shi Heng from the bottom of his heart. Especially after working together for a while, he found that this person was very afraid of death after he got a high position. His ability was only above average and he was even worse than Fang Dingshan in some aspects. Fang Dingshan only had his current position because of his good luck and seniority. If Shi Heng died in battle, then the position of commander would fall on Fang Dingshan's head. Therefore Fang Dingshan really hoped that something would happen to Shi Heng. It would be best if he was killed. Of course he wouldn't show any of this. When he saw Shi Heng's fear of death, Fang Dingshan despised him in his heart, but he said with a nonchalant expression, that shouldn't be the case. The Walla army only has 50,000 cavalry. If they really hurt you, they won't be a match for our Baiming army. Is commander overthinking it? After Fang Dingshan's explanation, Shi Heng's worries were mostly gone. Thinking about it, if they really wanted to harm the Baiming army, the Walla army would have acted before the 100,000 cavalry left and not now. Now that there was no news of the 100,000 cavalry leaving, it was indeed not the time to act. He shook his head and said, "It seems like Marquis is overthinking it." "Commander, you must be overthinking it." Fang Dingshan chuckled. At this moment, a soldier outside the tent asked to see him. The moment he entered the tent, he confirmed that he was indeed sick. Now the news had spread throughout the entire Walla cavalry camp. Under normal circumstances, when a general was on the battlefield, even if he was sick, he wouldn't tell anyone. This could easily affect the morale of the army. Therefore Shi Heng never thought that Xian would pretend to be sick. "Hey, you can leave." After telling the soldier to leave, Shi Heng chuckled. "Seems like Marquis is overthinking it. Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. Marquis just got the news that the 100,000 soldiers from the 4 nearby cities are about to arrive. At that time it will be time for us to attack the beginning city. General Fang, our chance to make a great contribution is coming." "Haha, then I shall congratulate you in advance, Commander." Fang Dingshan cupped his hands together. Then there was a burst of laughter in the tent. 50 miles away from the northeast of the beginning city, an army that stretched far away was gathering here. They were the troops of Bugnam of Gojozian Yang Chendong, who had rushed here from the direction of the Wulu Bone River. In fact, they had been here for more than a day. Considering that the other troops had not yet arrived at the designated location, Yang Chendong ordered the army to stop and rest. Everyone was exhausted from the rapid march. Next was the counterattack, and their physical strength must keep up. "Tell the soldiers to eat some dry food, rest more, and don't light a fire." Yang Chendong instructed the captain of the Longwei 1st Brigade, Qiu Vi. Qiu Vi took the order and left. Yang Chendong looked at Beta Persei, who was standing beside him, and asked, "Where is the Far Eastern Army?" "Young master, I just received their telegram. They will arrive at the designated location by tonight at the latest. Then they will wait for the young master's order and the counterattack will begin." Beta Persei said excitedly. They had been rushing all the way and finally they were going to fight. Of course he was happy because he loved fighting. "How many people do they have now?" Yang Chendong asked again. "Young master, almost all of the Liaodong army's 40,000 people have arrived. There are also nearly 20,000 people from the Molbei division, and about 40,000 Mongolian cavalry. In addition, there are 70,000 Walla cavalry prisoners who are being guarded by General Shi Wanshan and nearly 70,000 soldiers." Beta Persei replied respectfully. Chapter 1178. Okay. Yang Chendong's eyes showed confidence when he heard that there were 100,000 cavalry to help. "Tell Wang Shan to inform Tiger's man that we will launch a full-scale counterattack tomorrow morning. We will make the enemy pay the price and let them remember this painful lesson." "Yes," Beta Persei agreed and turned to leave when he heard that the battle was tomorrow. "Wait, send a telegram to Feng Liang and tell him to inform Sha Bei to regain control of Shajing and Jingzhou City and cut off the retreat of the Walla cavalry." Yang Chendong thought that if it were not for the participation of Yeshen's troops, The Baiming army would not have been able to attack New City for such a long time without any worries. He was determined to hit them hard and even had the idea of taking down Xian. The telegrams were sent out one by one. Qin Bo, the commander of the Far Eastern Army who received the telegram, issued an order to inform the troops to have a good rest tonight and start the counterattack tomorrow morning. The telegram was sent to Tiger's man in Jingzhou City, which made him excitedly slap the desk. A good desk was ruined just like that. Great. Immediately inform Lord Yu, Division Commander Yang Si and other division commanders to come to the military headquarters for a meeting. Hu Meng laughed heartily. After waiting for more than a year, news of the counterattack had finally arrived. It was time for him to vent his frustrations. Shajing City. Director Feng Liang, who had been hiding in the basement, almost shouted out in excitement when he received the telegram from Yang Qindong. After suppressing the excitement in his heart, he gently knocked on the wall door leading to the ground room. After a while, Xiaobei walked in. Since Rong Xiao left with 40,000 soldiers, most of the people who were monitoring him before also left, leaving only 2 people on the big tree outside the courtyard. They were only responsible for watching Xiaobei and not letting him leave the hospital. As for the situation in the courtyard, they didn't even want to look at it. A drunkard was not worthy of their attention. As soon as he entered the basement, he saw Feng Liang's excited look. Xiaobei was also happy, but he still asked tentatively and expectantly, "Director Feng, is there any good news?" "You're right," the 6th young master called. "Take a look at it yourself," Feng Liang said and handed the telegram to Xiaobei. Then he saw the dignified man who had silently swallowed all the grievances he had suffered burst into tears. Good. The 6th young master still believes in me. He has also given me an important task. This is the time for us to shed our shame. These days Xiaobei's mental pressure was great. He had no choice but to surrender, and there was even an element of faking it. But how many people could understand him? Could the 6th young master really understand him? The long-lost feeling returned to their bodies. Su Mansion. Su Yuan was eating dinner. Compared to normal people who only ate 1 dish or at most 3 or 4 dishes, he had more than a dozen dishes in front of him. Not only that, but there were also 2 beautiful women by his side. Ever since he submitted to Baiming, Su Yuan's life had fallen into debauchery. No one came to control him and no one dared to control him. This made him more and more lawless and unruly. Especially after Rong Xiao left, the entire city was completely under his control. He had even less scruples. Even when he ate, he was very ostentatious. He did not even need to use his hands. Instead, he needed someone to feed him, and it had to be a beautiful woman who fed him. While he was enjoying everything, he did not know that his brothers from the 1st Cavalry Division, led by Kong Ji, had surrounded the courtyard. His military power had already fallen. Those old brothers he trusted were either poisoned to death at home by the concubines of the CIA agents, or were ambushed and killed or captured by Kong Ji and the others on their way home or to the barracks. As for the infantry division, although there were 2 or 3 old brothers who escaped the net, because of their lack of strength, Xiaobei personally led the army into the barracks and dismembered them. Su Yuan was a selfish person. Ever since he took control of the military and took over Xiaobei, even if there were benefits, he would only share them with those old brothers. As for the ordinary soldiers under him, he did not care at all. The soldiers who were used to receiving high salaries from the 5-star army suddenly lost their source of income. Even if there was, it was pitifully little. Which one of them did not feel angry in their hearts? So when they saw Xiaobei wearing a general's uniform and leading troops into the barracks, not only did they not resist, but most of them even helped him to capture those who wanted to resist. The military incident ended with loud thunder and small raindrops. From the beginning to the end there was no movement at all. Su Yuan, who had been enjoying himself in the mansion, did not notice at all. Until the housekeeper rushed into the dining room in a panic. Su Yuan was still lying in the arms of the beautiful woman and saying some dirty words. Old master, something bad has happened." After the housekeeper rushed in, his legs went soft and he knelt on the ground. "What's going on?" Su Yuan frowned slightly. He was very angry at the housekeeper's performance, and he was even angrier that such a good atmosphere was disturbed. Su Yuan still had an indifferent expression, but in the eyes of the housekeeper he was angry that he did not fight back. However, he still knelt on the ground and trembled as he said, Old master, outside our mansion there are a lot of soldiers. They have surrounded us. What? Chapter 1179. He was just pretending to be confused. The other party had already surrounded his residence. It was obvious that they were coming with a strong momentum, not to mention that they were wearing the military uniform of the 5-star army. However, Su Yuan deliberately ignored this. He didn't mention it because he wanted to stall for time. He believed that the news of his mansion being surrounded must have spread. Perhaps if he held on for a little longer, his old brothers would come and rescue him. Seeing that Su Yuan was still talking nonsense, Kongji shook his head. This person was a little smart, but only a little smart. He didn't have a long-term vision. He was destined to not achieve anything big. Sigh, Mr. Su, you don't have to pretend anymore. You should be able to see why I'm here. I think it's better for you to surrender so that you won't lose face in front of so many people. Kongji pointed out the truth. This was the same as poking through the last layer of window paper. It was somewhat out of Su Yuan's expectations. He couldn't help but be surprised. Hearing Kongji's confident tone, could it be that he had already taken over the entire Shajing city? If that was the case, then he was really in danger. But how could he do it? Not only was there his infantry division here, there were also the 1st Cavalry Division, the 2nd Cavalry Division, the 3rd Cavalry Division, and other troops. How could he, a small commander of the 1st Cavalry Division, convince them all? Unless Commander Yi Bei stood up personally. When he thought about Yi Bei, shouldn't he be drinking in his mansion now? Right, why didn't the two people who usually kept an eye on the new 2nd Army report today? They should have sent a message before dinner. What was going on? Were they scared by the appearance of Kongji and the others? Even at this time, Su Yuan still didn't think that Yi Bei would stand up one day. After all, he was the one who wrote the public surrender letter. In order to please Baiming, he even killed his guard captain Wuxia. Such a person was basically useless. In a short period of time, it could be said that a myriad of thoughts ran through his mind. The final result was that they could still fight. Kongji first looked at the soldiers surrounding his mansion and found that most of them were still wearing the uniforms of the Baiming army. He immediately felt confident and stopped talking to Kongji. Instead, he said to the soldiers, "Brothers, Kongji has lost his mind and wants to deal with me. I am Baiming's personal lord of Shajing City. You want to deal with me because you want to fall out with Baiming, but have you thought about the consequences? You'll be beheaded and your family will be implicated." Needless to say, Su Yuan's shout did cause a certain amount of disturbance in the army. Even now, there were still many soldiers who didn't understand what was going on. It was only out of habit that they followed their commanding officer to carry out the mission. Just now, outside the mansion, when they saw that Su Yuan's mansion was surrounded, some people were confused. Now that these words were said, many people's faces changed dramatically. Some even looked at the leader, Kongji, with a somewhat different gaze. This change fell into Su Yuan's eyes and naturally made him very happy. He immediately added fuel to the fire and said, "This is clearly Kongji wanting to offend his superiors. This is all his own idea. Brothers, don't be confused and make mistakes with him. How about this? I will only catch the ringleader and don't care about the accomplices. If anyone is willing to follow me, it will be a meritorious performance. Later, not only will I not hold him accountable, but I will also reward him." The soldiers who were originally at a loss and muttering in their hearts became more hesitant after hearing Su Yuan's shout. Some people were even considering whether to stand by Su Yuan's side. Kongji didn't expect that at this time, Su Yuan could still make such a counterattack. He couldn't help but be amused for a moment and said, "What? Is this the final battle of a trapped beast? Do you really think that I didn't prepare it all before coming here? If you want to die, then this division commander will fulfill your wish. Come, invite the commander." Just a moment ago, Si Bei had already arrived, but he didn't stand out. Instead, he stood outside the team. Kongji had already seen this. He thought of what Commander Si Bei said in the previous meeting. He said that he didn't want to face the traitor Su Yuan, so he didn't have the intention to invite the commander. But now the morale of the army was obviously shaken. If the commander didn't come out, then it was very likely that there would be a problem. The moment Si Bei called for the commander, the crowd in the team panicked. Just as many people looked around, Si Bei appeared. He was wearing the 5-star army's uniform, especially the shining golden beads on his shoulder. Even though the sky was about to turn dark, they were still very dazzling. Bei finally appeared. When Kang Ji called for the commander, Su Yuan felt that something was wrong. This seemed to be completely out of his control and even imagination. And when he saw the Shui appear, this feeling became reality, making him feel as if he had been struck by lightning. A commander was a commander after all. His prestige wasn't something that division commander Kang Ji could compare with. In particular, there were all kinds of people. Due to the lack of time, there were people from all divisions. Kang Ji was only a division commander of the 1st Cavalry Division. It was obviously difficult for him to completely control them. But when it came to Bei, this wasn't a problem. As a commander, which soldier wasn't his former soldier? Bei's appearance caused the noisy discussions from before to immediately disappear. The situation was immediately reversed, and Su Yuan was pressured to the point that he couldn't breathe. After being stunned for a few breaths, Su Yuan's expression turned from black to white and then back to black. When he saw Bei appear, still wearing the 5-Star Army's uniform, he knew that things were going in the worst direction. But he still wouldn't give up without a fight. He was very clear what kind of role he had played before and how many things he had done wrong to the 5-Star Army. In the new 2nd Army, anyone could surrender, but he couldn't. Based on what he had done, even if Bei didn't kill him, he wouldn't be able to answer to Bugnam of Gozhou. He didn't have any friendship with Yang Chendong. He didn't believe that Yang Chendong would spare him, a two-faced person. If he didn't want to give up without a fight, then he could only fight back. Even if Bei personally appeared, Su Yuan still pretended to be unafraid and shouted, "Commander Bei, aren't you sleeping every day? What are you doing here?" "Oh, I know. You must have been threatened by someone, right? The person who threatened you is Kang Ji, right? Don't worry, with me here no one can hurt you. As long as you stand on my side, I can guarantee your safety." Originally, because of Bei's appearance, all the soldiers started to take sides. But with Su Yuan's shout, some of the weak-willed soldiers became confused. Could it be that Kang Ji really threatened the commander and that Kang Ji wanted to rebel? The changes in the soldiers below didn't escape Bei's eyes. He couldn't help but sigh and said, "Enough, Su Yuan. I didn't expect you to have such ability. You can turn black into white and say it so righteously. I'm afraid that people who don't know you will really believe your words. But what's true is true. How can it change because of a few words from you? Surrender. I will plead with Bugnam of Gozhou to save your life." After saying this to Su Yuan, Bei didn't have any intention of stopping. Instead, he said to the surrounding soldiers, "Soldiers, Bei was forced by the situation and for the survival of the new 2nd Army. I had no choice but to bow to Baiming. But this doesn't really mean that I want to surrender to Baiming. It's just a temporary measure. And all of this has also received the support of Bugnam of Gozhou. Now Bugnam of Gozhou has sent news that he has brought his army to the grasslands. Now he is besieging the Baiming army and the Walla army. It won't be long before he brings his army to our Shajing city. In order to welcome Bugnam of Gozhou, what we need to do now is to take back the city and do everything we should do." Moreover, Bugnam of Gozhou also said that he understands the decision that everyone made under that situation. So he won't make things difficult for any of us. Please don't worry about this. When the soldiers heard Bei's speech, they all revealed a joyful expression. A person's reputation was like the shadow of a tree. Just the 3 words Bugnam of Gozhou represented a magnificent army. It was an invincible aura and influence. It seemed that as long as Yang Chendong was there to fight, no matter how difficult the problem was, it would be easily solved. Long live Bugnam of Gozhou! Long live Bugnam of Gozhou! No one knew who took the lead to shout, but at that moment many people shouted loudly. Even the few bodyguards behind Su Yuan hesitated for a moment before they put down their weapons and shouted loudly. To others the thunder-like shouts were shocking, but to Su Yuan, it was no less than a death sentence. He knew that the overall situation was set and he could not turn the situation around. Thus he fell into a state of madness. He suddenly pointed at Bei and said, You are a villain, a fickle villain. Villain, you are talking about yourself, right? The 5-Star Army has treated you well and Bugnam of Gozhou has treated you even better. You actually secretly contacted Baiming and thought of betrayal. People like you are the one who is shameful. This time without Si Bei saying anything, Kang Ji had already started to scold. Unlike Su Yuan, who got his position as a division commander with Si Bei's help, Kang Ji's position as a division commander was personally appointed by Yang Chendong. Moreover, Kang Ji was a Han Chinese. He had once served in the 5-star army and performed well. Although he was not Yang Chendong's student in terms of loyalty, he was much stronger than a foreigner like Su Yuan. Su Yuan, who had already gone crazy, did not pay attention to Kang Ji. Instead, he looked at Si Bei and said, "Tell me, did you never trust me? You are lying to me, right?" Chapter 1180. She shook her head. If she didn't trust Su Yuan, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to ask Yang Chendong for the position of infantry division commander. It could be said that her one-sided kindness had harmed the other party. But now there was no need to explain this. She didn't say anything, which made Su Yuan burst into laughter. I knew it. Haha, you never trusted me. You're a despicable person. For your big plan, you don't care about anyone's life. Even your guard captain Wu Xiaoyi, you killed him without hesitation. A person like you is inhumane. Whoever follows you will be betrayed by you sooner or later. Bullshit. Kang Ji was still the one who shouted. The matter of guard captain Wu was originally discussed with the military commander. He also volunteered. If he didn't do that, how could you rest assured that the military commander had really surrendered? He used his own life to ensure that our entire new second army didn't scatter and fall into chaos. He is the biggest hero. Kang Ji's eyes turned red when he talked about Wu Xiaoyi's matter. Wu Xiaoyi's death was his own request. At that time, Kang Ji and Si Bei both shed tears after hearing it. Now it seemed that everything was worth it. If it wasn't for this, even if Si Bei wasn't harmed by Baiming, she would have been forced to go somewhere else. In this way, it would be very difficult for the new second army to unite and form a joint force. The sacrifice of one person in exchange for the integrity of an army was worth it no matter how one looked at it. And the person who sacrificed himself was naturally a great hero. Su Yuan, who just found out the truth, widened his eyes in disbelief. He thought that Wu Xiaoyi's matter was an exception and that Si Bei had no choice but to deal with it. He didn't expect that everything was premeditated. Thinking about it, it wasn't wrong. It was precisely because of Wu Xiaoyi's death that he and Rong Xiao lost their vigilance against Si Bei. The idea of transferring Si Bei away from here also stopped at that moment. He had never thought that all of this had been discussed beforehand. Thinking about how he had already fallen into someone else's trap from then on, and how it was normal for him to end up like this, he had nothing to say about his defeat. Su Yuan, who knew the truth, seemed to have aged a lot in that instant. In the eyes of the others, it was more or less unbearable. After all, this was his old brother. Sai, you should decide on your own. You should know that once you fall into the hands of others, it will be difficult for you to even die. Originally, Shirbi wanted to plead with Yang Chendong, but looking at this person's recent actions, it was simply unforgivable. Instead of waiting to be captured and tortured, it was better to have a quick death. It could also be considered as leaving behind the last bit of dignity in life. As soon as he said that, Su Yuan's body, which was about to collapse, straightened up again. People said that a bad life was better than a good death. He didn't want to die, and with a plop, he knelt in front of Shirbi. Military commander, I don't want to die. We are old brothers who have gone through fire and water together for many years. Please spare my life for the sake of my hard work, even if I didn't make any contributions. Bugnam of Gojoseon admires you so much. As long as you are willing to plead for mercy, he will definitely spare me. As he spoke, he crawled on the ground and quickly came under Shirbi's mount. Su Yuan spoke with snot and tears. Looking at Su Yuan's appearance, Shirbi felt a trace of pity, but military discipline was a mountain, so he still turned his head to the side. If he really let Su Yuan go, how would he explain to the sixth young master, and how would he explain to the dead Wu Xiaoyi? After continuously crying a few times, there was no response from Shirbi. Su Yuan's eyes flashed with madness and he suddenly shouted, "No. Why? We are old brothers who have gone through hard times together. You can be a military commander, but I can only be a division commander. You can obtain Bugnam of Gojoseon's trust, but I can't. I don't accept this. Shirbi, I will kill you. I want you to go to hell with me." As he shouted, Su Yuan pulled out his waist knife, raised it high and chopped down at Shirbi. Poochie! A sharp curved knife pierced through his body. Su Yuan's eyes widened as he watched the tip of the knife come out of his chest. He then looked back at Kong Ji, who was one step ahead of him, and the light in his eyes quickly dimmed. His head drooped and he died on the spot. This was the ugliest of human nature. When you made a mistake, you didn't know how to repent. Instead, you just blamed everything on others. When things were irreparable, you would plead for mercy. When your pleading failed, you would reveal your true nature. Unfortunately, Kong Ji had long been prepared for this move, and at the crucial moment killed him first. Bury him. Shirbi sighed and said to the bodyguard beside him. Then he didn't look at Su Yuan, who was killed. Instead he said to Kong Ji, change the flag. Announce to all the people in the city that we have changed flags and have returned to the embrace of the 5-star army. This was how the superiors were. They couldn't be too soft-hearted. Otherwise they wouldn't only hurt themselves, but also those who believed in them and followed them. After the order was given, Shajing and Jingzhou City were closed. The original Beiming dragon flag was also replaced with a bright 5-star red flag. Under the great wisdom of Shirbi and the others, the new Second Army was finally saved. At the same time, it also formed a response and sounded the horn for the destruction of the world of Wara. Shur City. A new day. The sun rose as usual. It was a sunny day and the weather was very good. There was no wind or rain, and the blue sky and green grass made people feel relaxed and happy. But this day was another dark day for the Beiming army and the Wala army. Just when most of the soldiers got up and were about to eat breakfast, a rumbling sound suddenly came from the ground. It was like spring thunder, completely breaking the tranquility of the grassland. After a series of rumbling sounds, a large number of troops appeared in the north and northwest of the barracks. They were like a sudden gust of wind, flying straight like a sharp arrow, approaching from afar. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! The scouts in charge of the security of the barracks shouted loudly, disrupting the normal order of the barracks. In the Beiming army's main tent, a scout rushed into the tent and fell to the ground. He said with his pale face, Marquis, the reinforcements of the 5-star army are here. The reinforcements are here. Shi Heng, who was eating breakfast with the help of the servants, froze when he heard this. Then his face darkened. Reinforcements? How many of them are here? Uncountable. There are so many of them. There is no end to them. The scout was so scared that he didn't know what to say. He could only tell the most direct impression. Bullshit. That's ridiculous. How can there be so many 5-star army here? Shi Heng reprimanded loudly. He waved his hand and dismissed the scout. Then he hurriedly said to the soldier beside him, pass down the order. The entire army is ready to fight. Take out my armor and weapons. After all, he was a veteran of the battlefield. He had participated in many life and death battles. He still had the basic composure. This scene didn't only happen in Shi Heng's tent, but also in other large tents. Just like in Tsingguang's tent, Su Dei had already arrived. General Tsin, the 5-star army is here. Let's prepare to retreat. Retreat? Can't we fight? Tsingguang said with some dissatisfaction. Usually Su Dei was quite brave. Back then they were able to break through the outer city of Shur City by relying on his bravery. But now he became so cowardly. Fight? How do we fight? Why don't you go out and take a look? Su Dei shook his head bitterly. He was very clear about Tsingguang's courage. However, if he could still say these words after seeing the lineup of the 5-star army, then he really had to admire him. Tsingguang, who was a little suspicious, really walked out of the tent. When he saw the endless cavalry of the 5-star army not far away, he almost rolled down from the platform. He was already sweating profusely. He looked at Su Dei and said anxiously, retreat, retreat. Everyone retreat. Roger. This was the answer Su Dei wanted. He didn't have the slightest intention to remind Tsingguang that Shi Heng hadn't given the order to retreat. What he wanted was to create chaos without fighting. This would be more beneficial for the expansion of the Bugnam of Gojosian army. Tsingguang ran away without any backbone. At this moment, Shi Heng was still arranging the defense at the front line. The 70,000 Liaodong cavalry were already eager to fight. Fang Dingshan rode on a tall horse with excitement in his eyes. He had long heard about how powerful the cavalry of the 5-star army was. Today he could finally see who was better. This had always been his dream. He wanted to defeat the 5-star army in front of so many people and tell the world that the Liaodong cavalry was the strongest. Rong Xiao also came and stood beside Shi. At this moment his eyes were filled with determination. This was his first time fighting a war. He had never experienced such a cruel scene before. He thought that fighting a war was just as exciting as storytelling. He didn't know the dangers and bloodshed in it. Rong Xiao's confidence came from the 100,000 soldiers behind him. In his heart he was secretly happy that he could perform well in front of Admiral Shi. In his opinion, his side had a few 100,000 cavalry and infantry. It was enough to fight against the reinforcements of the 5-star army. Perhaps it would be a great achievement, a great contribution. Compared to Rong Xiao's calmness, Shi, who was riding on the horse, had a worried look on his face. He had a feeling that since the reinforcements of the 5-star army appeared so openly, they must have come prepared. Then what was their backup plan? Was it just a cavalry charge? Facing the Baiming army that was making all kinds of preparations, there would be no victory in this kind of charging formation. Was the 5-star army crazy? Why did they choose to fight like this? Just as Shi was thinking about the reason for all of this, where was the 5-star army's backup plan and how to fight this battle, a messenger appeared with a panicked expression. Marquis, bad news, bad news. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.